Welcome to the Dirt on Growing, where we don't just plant seeds, we plant ideas that challenge the norm. I'm your host, Brandon Rust from Full Crop Sciences, and this is the podcast where living soil meets real science. From worm castings to bottled nutrients, microbial inoculants, and chemical pesticides, we're here to question the trends, break down the data, and empower your grow. It's time to think deeper and grow better.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of the Dirt on Growing podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mene Gene from Mendocino, owner of Freeborn Selections. And I'm sure most of you guys that are tuning in are already familiar. So welcome Jackson to the show. So how's everything going with you, man?
Good, man. Everything is going smooth. Getting ready for spring here, seeing some daffodils popping up in the yard telling me I need to start getting ready to plant some seeds and get ready for spring. So it's a good time.
Yeah, we've had a strange winter here. It was 76 yesterday. It's about 74 today.
It's been like that here too. Yeah. Really warm, not a lot of rain. We got like half the rain that we should have, and it's still been, the weather gets a little rainy here and there, but we're not getting a whole lot of rain, so hopefully it gets wetter here. But it's been kind of like spring all winter here. It's a trip.
Yep. I think we're gonna probably have an early spring, so it'll be soon. It'll be time to prep maybe in about a month here. But I wanted to talk today about the Black Lime Reserve, the Lime 1 and the Black Lime, so people can understand the differences between the two, the genetic lineage of those things, and how they came to be.
Yeah, so I mean, the basic difference between them is that Lime 1 is a PK cross Black Lime, and the PK that I have is an old one that's like an OG. It's like what people call Topanga or Malibu, with that little extra sweet kind of like Fruit Loopy, Lucky Charm, marshmallow, vanilla,
Yeah.
and a lime thing to it. I don't know that it's the same as those, or if those are like bag seeds from it or siblings, or what the real exact story is.
Yeah.
But I've had the same one. The one that I have now, I got it in around 2004, and it's just like a viney OG. It's not like the PKs that people
that are like the Bubbas and the Masters, right? That are all short and stocky. Yeah, because the PK that I paid my bills with PK for like 15 years, and what it has a similar profile to what you're describing, but it was short and stocky and almost identical to like the Master and the Bubba, but it had those violet hues streaked through the really like trichome laden, nice frosty kind of green bud.
Yeah, this one's like as green as can be. It won't get purple. It's just super green OG weed. It's like OG with a twist. It's pretty much, like if people back in the day when people wanted OG, it was OG, but it was a little bit different than the other OGs. And so that's what makes Lime 1 and the other stuff that I call lime. And then so PK and Black Lime mixed together. And then Black Lime Reserve is lime mixed with Chem Dog Special Reserve from Leo at Aficionado. And he gave me pollen, and I pollinated several things. And that was the main reason why I got the pollen from him, was to make a good amount of seed of what wound up being called Black Lime Reserve. And so that's what it is. It's confusing because people hear Black Lime Reserve and then they think that Black Lime is Black Lime Reserve, but Black Lime Reserve is really a quarter Black Lime, a quarter PK, half Chem Dog Special Reserve. And so that's the difference. And everything that I have that's called lime is pretty much all half like lime pop is a selection out of the lime. So it's PK and black lime
And
together.
if I remember correctly, the lime one that you used in some of your breeding projects, that male, that was a lime one grape soda skunk.
No, so yeah, so interestingly, like that's, you know, so I released a lime one back cross.
Mm-hmm.
And when I released the lime one back cross seeds, those were made with a lime one cross grape soda skunk back on a lime one. So they're a quarter grape soda skunk. And so those ones, I know you had some of those, you did some work with those.
Yeah.
Those are basically, you know, on paper, they're 3/4 lime and a quarter grape soda skunk. And so in those, there's ones that go different directions, and some of them came out really limey, and some of them don't. But they tend to have like a little bit of a bigger, fatter, easier to trim buds from the grape being in there. And those
Yeah,
are,
they were they were big plants, and those particular plants were so unique in how broad the leaf sets were, and how just they were like bulldogs, you know what I mean? They were short and stout and just, you know.
yeah. So the grape soda skunk is like super, it's almost like deep chunk. It's super, super broad. It's really short. It's really slow growing and sturdy. And then the lime has a little bit more vininess to it because of the PK in it and because of some of the narrow leaf stuff that's back in the black lime. But the lime itself as starts will have some huge fat fingers on the leaves, but then the plants will be a little bit more rangy and a little more space in them, whereas the grape soda skunk is just like a little pyramid Christmas tree with big fat huge crazy leaves, totally dinosaur looking plants. And so in that you know, back cross, you get a lot of the different stuff like that. And then there's a lot of stuff I made with the lime pop male, which was originally, you know, that's an abbreviation of lime popsicle. It was a plant that I had a bunch of males, and there was one that just in veg just reeked of like, it smelled like a lime popsicle. And then when it flowered and got laid into flower, it actually was fairly resinous, and it had a hint of like a little bit of like mandarin peel along with it. And so it made a lot of things that come out being like what I call like mandarin lime, or different little variations on the citrus kush flavors. And so there's a lot of stuff with the lime pop in it. And so those are kind of the broad categories. There's a lot of black lime reserve stuff people have made. There's a lot of stuff made with the lime one back cross, which has grape soda skunk in it.
Yeah, that lime one back cross was really unique. And you know, when I did a huge hunt when I first got to Oklahoma, and the best plant in there was that lime one grape soda skunk, right? But it was a male, and I was like, dude, I can't get rid of this plant. And the crosses that I made with it, what happens is that they are 1-to-1. So they're like high 1-to-1. So you get a lot of CBD. And what's really interesting is the effect with a high 1-to-1, when you have 12-13% THC and 11 or 12% CBD, the effect is for me anyway, is different than any of the most weed affects me the same. You know, sometimes some will make me sleepy, but this definitively gave me like a feeling, kind of like you get that really relaxed body high where you feel like nice and kind of almost fuzzy, where you're like, oh dude, yeah, this is like, I feel good.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I really like, you know, I like weed that has really specific effects. A lot of the stuff that everybody smokes now is it's very much a general weed effect. It's like, yeah, it's potent, I'm stoned, but
For 30 minutes.
yeah, and that can be cool. I was actually talking to a buddy that I've talked to a lot over the years on Instagram, that I was just talking to at the Mendocino thing, and he's like, yeah, I mean, in its place, that's actually a really great product. Like, you only get so high, you don't ever get any higher, and you smoke a bunch, and when you smoke it, it's real predictable. You know, you'll only be high for 30 or 40 minutes. And you can see why it's a good commercial product that people enjoy when they buy a sack, because they smoke it and then they can do whatever's going on. Whereas some of the really, the weed that we're gonna think is more special and a higher quality is it's like you might really get high for like some of the root beer stuff I have, or like the like what I call Coco Jarro, which is like a root beer selection with a Jarro added back in, or the Jarro stuff. It's like I'll smoke it and it'll be, you know, I went hiking in the woods looking for chanterelles, and I smoked a little bit of a joint and thought like, oh, I'll just hit it and I'm not really going to get high. I'll just smoke a little bit. It was like 4 hours later and I was like, I'm still high. Like I'm still like really, really actually super high off of this right now. And most weed, you know, that's popular, it really is like if you're high for an hour, you'll be surprised. Like, whoa, it's an hour later, I'm still high. But I can see like what's good about that. But at the same time, it's like
Well, it makes sense if you're selling weed, because you're going to have to sell more of it for people to, you know, continue to maintain that buzz, you know, and a lot of people just want to, you know, would rather just be stoned than having to deal with all the bullshit that we're dealing with today.
Yeah.
And I get that. And some of the stuff too, though, a lot of the stuff that I have, like the onset is like full blown anxiety. And if you can't deal with that, like that could be, I think for some people that they don't like that feeling either, because it's like it's like anxious, and then people are like trying to chill, and it's like, no, this is like, go do something, go do some work, go write something. Like,
yeah, your body needs to move. Your body needs to move. Your brain needs to move. That's what I've realized over the years, is like a lot of the weed that's my favorite weed when it's really strong, because I do like weed that's kind of like will make you rush out a little bit. Like you hit it and it's almost like a nicotine rush, or it's like a drug rush from the weed. It's not just like mellow, like the grape stuff you were talking about. It's like the root beer and the lime. I like it because I hit it and immediately I'm like, whoa, fuck, okay, I'm getting really high right now. And I really like that, but I do find that it's about, you know, usually between 10 and 20, maybe 30 minutes, that it has that real heavy edge where I'll like have like kind of my heart will feel a little bit jittery, and my heart will be rushing, and I'm like really high, and I'll like
that's
that.
how you know it's working.
Yeah, I know it's working. And it's like I kind of want that rush from it. It's like an adrenaline rush in a sense. But I've realized over the years that when you get that same rush, if you're like at a cool concert watching music you really like, or you're outside and you're like doing something where you're moving and your body can move, it doesn't turn anxious, because it works out physically.
Yeah.
But if you're like trying to be like still around a bunch of people hanging out, and you're just like trying to like have conversations and shit, I get really uncomfortable, and I'm like, man, I shouldn't have fucking smoked, because now I like, you know, if we were on the beach and we were going to go for a walk on the beach and look for rocks or shells, or like go in the woods and look for mushrooms or check stuff out, and we're like being active, I would be fine. I wouldn't even notice. But when everybody's just sitting there, especially if it's people I don't know that well, I'll just get really fucking uncomfortable, and I'll start
Get it.
I'll just like I'll regret it. But the weed you're talking about, like the grape lime and a lot of the lime, I'll think that's going to happen, and then it won't happen. And I'll just be super comfortable in this feeling of like well-being. And then I'll go, oh shit. Okay. And you realize like there's a lot of nuance to all these different highs, but most of the weed that's really popular, like I smoke stuff with buddies, and it'll be, you know, lemon cherry gelato or runts or whatever, all that kind of stuff. And I'll smoke it and I'll go, this tastes really good. This is good. I like this. And then I'll be like, fuck. And it actually works. It's not weak. I'm getting really high. But then I'll be kind of high in a way that doesn't make my time really feel a lot better. Like it's kind of the weed that I maybe would be better off smoking alone or at night when there's not really stuff going on, because it has kind of a dullness to it, and it makes me feel uncomfortable, high enough to be uncomfortable and edgy, but it doesn't like make me like, it's not inspiring to me. Whereas a lot of weed that I really like, I smoke it and like funny shit pops into my head. A lot of that popular weed, it doesn't like make things funny. It just makes
or creative, right? You know, because
it
creativity is one of the side effects that I get from really strong weed, And it's like, I could smoke, and then if I sit down and I'm thinking and I'm writing, physically doing something, or if I'm like jamming on the guitar or whatever, you can just kind of, it just expresses itself through, like you were saying, physical activity, the thing that you're doing, as opposed to like you thinking in a room full of people that are, that you made.
It's like the creativity turns into paranoia, like, oh, I'm going to have creative thoughts now. And it's like, is that dude a fed?
Yeah.
Is this that dude? Like, like you're like, oh God. And then you realize it's like, yeah, that's not really the high that I want to go for. And I can't say that low quality weed. It's incredible. Like I do appreciate like the quality of these things that make these huge waves. It's not that I think they're not good weed. It's like, they're not really for me. And I think they're probably not really for a lot of the people who are smoking them. I think it's like, it tastes so good, and it's so like novel in that you're like, oh, this is like, there's really something to this. And so you enjoy that, but then you don't realize that it's like a Trojan horse for like a vibe you don't really want. It's like, oh man, this is so good. Yeah, this is good. I want to smoke this. I want a bag of this. And then like you smoke it and you go, fuck, I think maybe I'm not really getting what I wanted from a weed high out of this, So I like the lime so much. It has like it always kind of elevates my mood. And if I'm tired and it's nighttime, it'll kind of relax me and make me sleepy, which is weird. It's kind of like, I say it's like a Swiss Army knife effect. It's like, do you need this or do you need that? And it'll kind of do everything, but always with I never smoke it and go, fuck, I shouldn't have smoked that. Like some of the stuff I have where I took like, I had like the Ghost OG crossed with the lime pop. And then when I smoke that and it's like time to go to work, I'm like, yeah, I feel this is way too heavy and OG, but the lime by itself still has that nice balance that doesn't do that to me. So
when you're talking about the like lime popsicle, because everybody has different ways of expressing the way that they're experiencing something. My question is that, because I found in the black lime that I often get what I call trop lime. So it's kind of like the Tropicana cookies. It's kind of like the trop cherries, but it's that trop, which is that candied methyl anthranilate, which is a flavonoid that cannabis produces. But instead of being like cherry or cookies, it's that distinct earthy lime peel.
Yeah. That was what was heavy in that particular male. And so a lot of things that I bred, like coming out of the lime pop was F2 of the lime. And so that was, I took the female that I call lime 1, and I crossed it with her brother out of the F1 of the PK black lime to make an F2. And the brother I used was what I labeled as limiest, as limiest male, 2011 cross with lime 1. And so I made that cross and then bred it to F5, and that's like the males that I use. I mean, I bred it to F5 in a bunch of different directions too. That's what like people don't picture a lot of times when you tell people, oh, I have this F5. They're like, oh, you made it. It's like, no, I made like 60 F5s going in different as soon as you leave the F1, it branches out in all these directions. And I have these tubs and tubs of, this is where I took it to F4 in 2015. And this is where I took it to F4 in 2017. And this is where I took it to F5 in 2017. And there's all these little lines.
Yeah, I get that, because I'm doing the same thing with the blueberry train mac, because when I got to the F2 population, the variances, I was finding things that I wouldn't even expect in that line at all. There was complete outliers. And so it's like, I have the skunk cut, the herbal cut, I have the crinkle cut, which is truest to that train wreck blueberry profile. And so when I made F3s, I made multiple F3s. There's 4 different F3 lines, right? And then, from the F4s that I have popped right now, they come from one of those lines, but I still am going through these other ones to select out characteristics. When you were selecting, were you usually selecting for that popsicle, that trop kind of sweet candy profile with the lime?
The ones that I really chase the hardest, that I always try to lock down, there's two kind of general things. I mean, you could say really there's more, but like they kind of fit into the realm of kind of two things. There's like the nasty chemical one that comes a lot from like the Northern Lights oil can that's in there that wasn't the fruity side. And it was the one that carried the really insane potency. Like it
Yeah.
could make people like kind of, it could turn your stomach. Like it'll turn 3 beers into 12 beers, you know, you'll just be like, fuck, it's so strong. And that was the side that carried like the eucalyptus and the peppermint and the really gnarly, like deep mossy funk, like
All those
floor
earthy tones.
janitor's closet, earth gnarliness. And then there was the other side, which was the female side in the original Black Lime Cross, which was a mix of Northern Lights and Afghani, or it's possible that the Afghani that they were saying was in it was the Northern Lights, and they just meant Northern, because I got it, it's oral tradition, right? I got it verbally. I didn't get it on paper, so it's like Northern Lights Afghani, and then later on I found out there was a Burmese indica in the mix. So the Burmese indica is also one of those things where that's a hybrid. So it's a Burmese with an indica, and then it's a Northern Lights with an Afghan. But it also could have just been Northern Lights Afghan. They might have meant that the Northern Lights was an Afghan. Which Afghan? The Northern Lights Afghan. I'm not sure. So that's always been unclear. But that side of it over there is where the citrus came from. And it carried more of a light potency, but it was still good weed. It just wasn't, the Northern Lights oil can side was the extreme potency, because but both of those things had a lot of strong stuff in them. So the two sides there, what you wind up with is like the really gnarly, like pog, I call it, but that's purple, orange, green, not passion orange guava like a lot of the other pogs you'll hear about, because there's several pogs from different people. But it was the Northern Lights oil can we called the pog, and then the Northern Lights Afghan, I thought it was for a long time, until my buddy found out, oh no, that has the Burmese indica in it too. And then that explained a little bit of why there was the fruity stuff in it, because the Burmese carries a little bit more of like the citrus, the different citrus peel kind of things that are in there that are like special and different than other stuff. And so in breeding it, I tend to look at things a lot like, is it the nasty chemical, or is it the sweet citrus?
Yeah.
And so I say really three, because there's also the one that I really like the most, which is a combo, which is what Lime 1 is. Lime 1 is very much, it has some of the citrus, but on certain days you'll be like, there's no citrus in this at all. And other days you'll be like, oh, I smell the lime peel. But sometimes it'll just smell like diesel, kush, earth, weird, like eucalyptus, peppermint. And then other days you'll smell it and you go, oh, it does smell so limey.
Those two profiles are what the male that I had, you know, because when you gave me seeds, I don't know when that was, maybe 2019 or something like that, of the F1 BLRs. I ran through, I think, like 68 of them, and the best plant in there was that male. And I was like, dude, I'm just gonna hold on to this. And I've been using it for, you know, I use it for years, and so I got to grow all the progeny of that specific male to see what it added to these other, you know, known cultivars. And it would bring in oftentimes that trop lime, but it also brought in this like really earthy, like you say, lime peel, like but it's more like an acrid, like, I want to say undertone.
Yeah.
That pulls through the whole thing, but it's not the most dominant thing, but you can distinctly smell it in there.
Yeah, it'll put layers into everything. The lime's like that, and it doesn't like to go away. So the reason why the initial black lime hybrid was so successful in what I was trying to do was it was a trip. Interestingly enough, like the way I described the lime, it's like it mostly has those two elements: the nasty, deep, earthy chemical element, and then the bright citrus, nice, what you're calling it, has that candyish thing. Those two elements. What's really trippy is both plants that made that cross, they were like minorities among their populations. So I had a lot of plants from the seed that had the Burmese in it, and none of them were heavy citrus. Only one was. And then out of the other ones, a lot of those females would be weird, and they would smell like marinara or chicken, or a lot of things that were like really undesirable. And so when we went through and found a male to put on everything in this one seed garden, I really sniffed through to be like, okay, I don't want any that have a hint of foodiness. And it was a trip because really in the one breeding, it bottlenecked out everything that wasn't the two parents, which it doesn't typically happen that way. A lot of times you'll keep a lot of these remnants of what was in the rest of the population, and you won't just get the thing that you want. And I really like right away got this thing where it was like, whoa, they all either have the good part of the oil canny stuff or they have the good part of the Burmese stuff. And so ever since using those particular plants, they like had this founder effect where after them, everything is a lot like them.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of just play with going, okay, is it the one extreme, the other extreme, or the center? And what I really wanted from it was originally just the straight citrus. But after I got to like the mix, I realized the mix was really, really special. And that's what people know a lot from the Black Lime Reserve, because Leo's male really reinforced kind of that mixed thing, because interestingly enough, Chem 4 carries some of that like lemon chemical funk, and the Chem D in that mix also carries like some of the deep earthy skunky funkiness that came from the chemical earth side, from the poggy stuff. So the hybrid wound up really good, and that's why originally when I talked to Leo and Ellie about making a hybrid with them, they had brought me the last little jar of the ChemDog Special Reserve that won the Emerald Cup, and I looked at the jar and I smelled it and I was all, damn, this is fire. Like, this is really fucking good. It was like my initial reaction to it was like, damn, it's like a dried chanterelle soaked in spick and span or some shit. It was such a good version of like a Chem 4 Chem D mix. And then I had my Lime 1 sitting right there, and I was like smelling it, and I'm like, and I'm looking at it, and I dropped it in the jar and I go, look at that. And it like looked like the same weed. They were both really yellow. Like, you'll notice a lot of the weed, the Black Lime Reserve people will be like, these pounds look yellow. It's like, yeah, because the resin's yellow. It's like super gnarly, that Chem 4 resin. But the Northern Lights in the oil can, it also got that really yellow resin. So when you looked at them, they were similar. When you smelled them, they were similar. And so the Black Lime Reserve, the reason why that hybrid got made was because it made a lot of sense. And so the Black Lime Reserve, going through it, you find a lot of these common things where it's like, okay, is that from that side or is it from that side? And it's actually taken me quite a while of going through tons of lime stuff over the years to really go, okay, the ones that really come from the ChemDog Special Reserve, from that particular male, are the ones that get a little bit more, they almost are like soaked in grease, and they are very similar to like furniture polish, like Murphy's lemon furniture polish. And when I discovered how similar it was because I had people trimming the weed, and they were using fucking furniture polish to clean their scissors. And I was like, that shit can't go anywhere near any of this weed. So as soon as they set up and they start doing stuff, I'm like, wait, what do you guys can't, no, you can't. If you want to clean your scissors with shit, you need to use like a lighter, maybe a rag with a little bit of olive oil on it, alcohol, but no petro bullshit. I was like, this is like people's medicine. Like, basically what you guys trimmed, you fucking ruined it, And they were like, oh, sorry. And so I went back out there later on to go check on them, and I smelled the weed, the freshly trimmed weed, and I go, I was really mad. I was like, I fucking told you guys like to just switch to this. And they were like, no, we did. And I was like, fuck. So I dug into the buck down weed, and I trimmed up a little bit myself. And I was like, holy shit, it's so similar that it was almost hard. It was hard to tell the difference. And I realized that the first weed probably didn't really have that much shit on it, but it smelled so much like the rag they were using to clean their scissors that it was like hard to tell apart. And in my lime, it's a lot more clear. It doesn't have that like deep petroleum, funky, greasy, like mine's greasy, but you know the difference from the Black Lime Reserve versus the Lime One Back Cross, seeing like you.
Oh, they're completely different in my opinion. So the Lime One BX compared to the Black Lime Reserve is more like the Lime One BX didn't have like the like bright citrus to it. It was still acrid, but it was way more earthy.
Yeah. Well,
And
that too, that influence does come from the grape soda skunk too, because it's not a citrus at all. It's very much a chocolate, burnt rubber,
yeah,
grape, and earth. And so that line is a little bit different, but it's definitely, there's a sharpness to the Black Lime Reserves that are good. That's a little different. It's the Chem 4 sharpness,
I used that and I crossed it into Gorilla Glue years ago, probably maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I still have some people that are even in the chat right now, they're growing it out consistently because their customers keep asking for it because it does have that 1-to-1. But they get a lot of those, again, things like the burnt rubber, the really acrid, earthy type notes on it.
Yeah.
Where you're talking about the cleaner and the earthy acrid like chem garlic type notes, you're gonna when I have one of these things ready, I'll send it to you. But the Chem Dog cross to Black Lime Reserve, I tell people it's a masterpiece because the way that it smells, so it has this chem profile where it has like garlicky kind of sour note to it, but when you smoke it, the smoke distinctly tastes like that trop lime. It's distinctly trop lime on the smoke, but it smells like a chem sour. So it's super. It's like if both of those are in there, but one of them you can only taste it when you're smoking it, and you can really, really taste it. But like you can't smell it on the terpene profile. Like it's like the garlic and those are so dominant that none of that sweet lime or that trop lime comes through until you start blazing. It's cool. It's really awesome. I really like it.
Yeah, things that taste better or taste more complex than they smell are amazing, because a lot of stuff, it's like you think it's going to be great and then it just tastes like some normal shit, So when you think it's going to be really good and then it tastes better, it's like, damn, that's crazy. But in a sense, yours is because you use the Chem D, right?
Yeah.
So yours is a distant back cross. So like in back crossing, usually you take something and then it's half and you put it back and it's 3/4 on paper, doesn't necessarily mean it'll express that way. But in this case, the Star Dog has Chem D back in it a ways from JJ putting it in there. So it's cool because you've taken it and now you have something that on paper would be like, half Chem Dog plus like a 16th Chem Dog or whatever was in the, a little tiny slice of extra. So you have a parent that can make weird recessive stuff pop out that you might not be able to do if it didn't have, like if you took my regular lime and cross it to Chem D, you'll have a different result than if you take the Black Lime Reserve and cross it to Chem D, because you have both parents carrying a little bit of that genetic there. So it's a little bit of magic you can bring out potentially.
That was the last bit of pollen, because we had flowered out a huge plant and saved a bunch of pollen, and that's what I'd been using for projects. And the last vials of pollen for that Black Lime Reserve male, that's what I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna put it on this Chem D. It was a good use of the pollen. But I'll tell you what, man, that BLR male really enhanced the high of everything that it touched, especially things like Purple Punch, which is kind of known for being lackluster. But with the high is psychotic. It's not something that like I would never recommend anybody smoking that before they drive, for instance.
Yeah, it's cool. And in that case too, you might have another case again, like the Purple Punch has OG Kush in it. So then the lime also has the OG Kush in it, and they're both like worked and different and not like OG clones. So there's weird slices of the genetic pie in there. So when you're putting it together, like you can have things line up to where you could get some weird recessive to pop out of the OG from way back coming forward to make, like you said, like some wild highs, you know, some little pieces of the OG popping out that could be super crazy potent. And that's what's so cool about trying a bunch of different stuff, is like you don't know what's gonna happen when, you know, these old cousins, you know, there's like there's relations there, but they're super distant. So then you get all kinds of neat stuff that can pop out. And like Purple Punch is one of those plants that I think it was such a good plant beyond the quality of the weed that it got super popular, and it blew up, and then it kind of killed itself because it was like everyone was like, dude, this is not all it's cracked up to. Like we had
it's like any of those things. It's just like the good batches of Sour D, bad batches, good batches of Blue Dream, bad batches. When something gets that popular, you're gonna see knockoffs, you're gonna see poorly cultivated batches.
For sure.
I also felt like too, that specific variety, people were harvesting it a little early because it looks like it finishes fast.
So hard, yeah.
You know, but it's like, take it a little bit longer, the effect is going to be a little bit better.
Yeah, things get more, you know, a potency comes around a lot in the later part of flower, and with some things it's not worth the trade-off because the type of the high will fall off so hard. But like Purple Punch was a trippy one because I think even if people grew it perfectly, it still wasn't maybe as good as it was cracked up to be. Like people thought it was going to be so good, and then you smoke it and you're like, we like Berry White was like that up here. Everyone grew the shit out of Berry White because it was just like such a cool plant. And then you smoke it once and you go, oh, it's pretty good. And then you smoke it a couple more times and you're like, yeah, it's not as good as what it kind of seemed like initially, even though it's so resinous and so fun to grow and everything. But Purple Punch was one of those ones that seems to have really had the potential to breed great things really easily. It just needs you just need to bring a little kick, over. Dude. It's so close to being the perfect plant. And it's like symbiotic. They made a lot of really cool stuff with Purple Punch. It was like, you know, Purple Punch is cool, but some of the hybrids are great. Like there was a cut going around for a while of the Wedding Crasher, which was Purple Punch wedding cake, and it was like the plant was so much cooler than either of the parents. And I thought it was like, just as soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, that's such a cool you know, like just a base to use because of the way it budded and how fast it flowered and how much it did want to produce a lot of resin. It just, the resin seemed a little empty-ish, you know.
Let me ask you this. So I know that, you know, we've both been in the game for a minute, and I have always judged harvest times based off of the development of the stigma, or what people will call hairs. But there's, you know, a lot of people look at trichomes to see, and my thinking on that, if you're looking at trichomes, it's like, for me, it's like the only way that I would be doing that is if I was a hash maker and I'm looking at abscission points, because typically what I'm seeing is, you know, those cannabinoids and those terpenes being oxidized. What is your take on that? Because some people look at trichomes, some people don't. Some people judge by stigma. Some people, you know, have various ways in which they're judging their harvest time. And then the second part of that is, do you judge your harvest time also based off of the effect that particular plant during a certain harvest window? Because some varieties will be a little more uplifting, a little more mental, and as you take them further, maybe a couple weeks, they'll be a lot more sedative. What's your take on those two things?
So it's trippy because a lot of people, who are growing weed, they really need an easy way to know. So like having a flowering time attached to clones for a lot of people is really good to go like, oh, I'm growing OG and I know I like it at day 68 or I like it at day 73, or to really know is really nice. Although I think those numbers get tweaked by different nutrition, light, temperature, all these different things, how root bound they are, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So there's like a lot that goes into it. But you know, people who are doing commercial production, it's really important to know like we're cutting now. Like this is when it's going to be cut and have it be predictable. And but I have the luxury of just growing things and not worrying if I ruin them or if I make them be their very best. And so I fuck around a lot with all of the different plants that I have for different harvest windows. So I've always really liked to cut some when I know it's a little bit too early off of like if I'm growing a new clone, if someone says, hey, this is, you know, whatever clone it is, I'm like, all right, I'd like to, you know, somebody gives me triangle kush. I'm like, all right, let me cut off a branch of this when I think it's 2 weeks from being done, which sometimes will turn out, well, that was a month from being done. Like when you really see things finished, but like, okay, I'm going to cut a piece of it here, cut a piece of it there, cut a piece of it here, cut down most of it and leave a little bit to go what I know for sure is going to be overdone. And sometimes I discover that what I want, I'm 100% positive it's going to be overdone. The stuff that I left actually improved a little bit. And I realized that had I cut it all at once, I would have never even known that it does get better a week longer than what I thought it was going to be. And so originally, I used to look at stuff back in the day and it would be like, you know, especially, you know, how it was in like the 90s. It was like you were trying to get the weed
sold as fast as possible.
Yeah, and it's a huge liability to have it
Oh,
grown.
we're at fucking 52 days. It's time to harvest.
Yes. So we would always kind of look at weed and go, okay, it doesn't look premature, cut it. Like as soon as there's enough of the hairs are turned and it's swollen enough and you know you're not ripping yourself off, you're not cutting it when a rip off would cut it, you're like, okay, it's got to go. We got to get it down. And so I used to look at a lot just like, okay, whatever, 2/3 of the hairs are turned or whatever. And then it would be like, if you just have one little plant somewhere, you could go, okay, let's like really let it go. It's going to keep getting bigger. Let's try to let it get more weed. And then I found out about the resin and, oh, the resin's supposed to be this much clouded or this much amber. And then I started to realize that, like, depending on your conditions and depending on things that go wrong, like if things get underwatered, overwatered, nutritional imbalances, temperature swings, whatever it is, your resin could get a little bit messed up. And especially it could get messed up on certain parts of the plant when really most of the resin on the plant isn't like the resin you're looking at right there. And you can't look at the resin on the whole plant. And then I started realizing that there were certain things I had, like my jarro that come from the sour diesel, where the resin, I would be watching it, waiting for the resin to cloud, and the weed would start to bolt and actually go into re-veg mode while I'm waiting for it to finish, and the resin would still be clear. And I was like, damn, so some resin doesn't actually ever cloud. So there's like these things that are really good general things for like commercial producers to look at and go, okay, this is weed we can cut. We're not ruining our crop. It's got to come down at this day. And so day 58 is good for this one. And we know it's good and everyone likes the weed and it's good. And like you said, with effect, you know, you discover, okay, this one has like lime. If you let lime go too far, the effect will get muddy and the smell will fall flat and become foody and you'll lose the sharp candiness. I'm sure that there's molecules that are basically super sought after by our noses and our palates that they turn into other things, and they turn, they become thiols, or they become
Yeah.
these other things, and they maybe just turn into just muck that we don't want at all. But there's these little windows for certain things that are the perfect time to take them. And if they go too far, they'll fall flat. And then there's other things, and lime has a long window. Lime, before it's done, because of the nature of how it forms its resin, it forms a lot of finished flower. It like sequentially, it's like there's finished flower on some of the lime when it's like really young. And then it just continues to grow more finished flower for a long time. And by the time it gets a little overdone, the flower that's been sitting there for so long is just turned to shit, because it was kind of done a month ago while the other weed's still growing.
Yeah.
And so there's a weird balance there. So I think like it comes down to really knowing the specific genetics you're dealing with. And then in hybrids, knowing what the parental lines, what they're like, so that you know, if you're growing like Chem D cross with the lime, that maybe when you might normally be able to take something really long, once there's lime in it, you're like, maybe I should take it a little earlier so the flavor doesn't fall flat, or so the
Yeah.
effect doesn't become muddy.
Well, one of the things that I see is that with product that's aged or a little bit older, it's been in the jars, it like you're talking about, it loses a lot of those nuances. And oftentimes I see that lime develop into like a coffee kind of profile, like an earthy kind of coffee profile, which I'm not personally a fan of. I don't even drink coffee like regularly.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a big fan of it. And so I do see that. And what I try to do is like, so like have my number 12, the ChemD BLR, that happened pretty fast. So it lost the desirability pretty fast. And so it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to rotate. I'm still growing it out because I'm doing, some more runs on it just to test. But out of the first initial run, the one that retained all of those nuances is the number 16, which I mean, it was the one that I smoked the most of, that went the fastest, and that was able to keep, those profiles for a longer period of time.
Yeah. So you'll find those plants that are like that, and then you might discover that if you go back and you take your other one and you go, oh, if I cut it 10 days earlier, then it's some stuff, if you let it get to a certain point of maturity, it'll be like it was already kind of about to spoil on the vine. And so if you can actually get it a little bit earlier and preserve it at that younger stage, then it might stay good also later in the bag. Like all of my cherry stuff is like that. And things that are have more oils and grease to them, like Skittles, cherry crosses, Urkel things. Like if you let them really go far, then you might cut down on the shelf life as a dried flower as well. And then some things too, like it might be something that spoils fairly fast, but if you were to take it and put it in the cold right away, you might be able to arrest that process so that it's not sitting there spoiling itself, because there's so much action on the molecular level in the resin as it sits at room temperature, versus if you can slow all those molecules down, then it's not hurting itself as fast too.
Yeah. And I see that on the Black D's. I think I'm in week 4 or 5, and I'm starting to see some stigmas change only on that specific variety. While I have other varieties, I have the Chem D, I've got some high divorce rate limelights, I've got all these other different plants that don't show that at all. And I know my environmental parameters are correct. I haven't sprayed anything, but you can see them where they're like the stigmas are starting to go a little bit faster than normal. But I know that that they're not, it's not like they're not even close to ready. They still have at least, another 40 days left.
Yeah. So the first time that I grew the stuff that the lime comes from was in 99. I got the seeds, I think, in 96 or 97, somewhere right in there. I definitely had them to plant them in 99, and I had been sitting on them for a little bit. And I took them and I put them in this guerrilla garden, and everything started budding. And I was looking at them when they just had little buds. Like they were going to wind up getting, you know, they weren't going to be huge, but they were going to be pretty good size. And they were like this big, and I was looking at them, and everything that I knew about maturity, I was like, I was used to a lot of the more old school stuff. It would kind of grow up and grow the whole scaffolding more like how a sour diesel does, where it'll get a lot of bud and it'll be like puffs and it'll grow a lot of little flowers everywhere. I noticed that it grew like a little bit of flower, and then the flower would swell, and then it would get really resinous. And as it was doing this, it would be constantly growing a little bit of new flower, but the older flower would be like becoming mature as it grew. And at a certain point, I looked at things and I was like, are these just going to be tiny buds, and they finish like they only bud for like 30 days or 40 days? What's going on with this stuff? And I'm just like watching it, and it just continued to like grow finished weed the whole time. And so that changed quite a bit when I crossed it with the Northern Lights oil can, because the Northern Lights was more of a classic thing where it would grow more bud. Like it would grow, and then the bud would be there, and then all the hairs would turn and it would swell and the resin would swell up. But the lime, for whatever reason, it was like it would grow kind of finished weed the whole time. And that's why, you know, I think that's one of the reasons, like I said, that it will spoil faster, because if you let it go a little bit too far, that weed's been sitting there forever. And that's probably what you're seeing is a remnant of that genetically in your lime cross, where it kept some of that. So because I remember that looking in that garden and being like, all the other stuff was this big old, just like maggot hairs everywhere, just big old these buds, and they're growing, and they're white hairs all over, you know, like little puffs everywhere. And this stuff, I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's super resinous. The pods are really big and swollen. The buds are small. The hairs are turning orange. And it was like really, really trippy to me. And then I came to think of it as almost like a plant that kind of like grows like rock candy instead of growing like big puffy flowers. It just kind of sits there and it just grows this resin and a little bit of weed. And it's just a real trippy thing. But that was my first experience with it, was similar to what you're seeing right now, I think, you know?
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of flower in the resin production with that cross is more distinct and definitive than the mom, the Chem D. So you see more trichome coverage, and you see it is more defined on things like the water leaf, and it's not just like on my Chem D, most of the resin is on the calyxes, on the inflorescence, while with this other cross, it's more widely distributed. It's on the stalks, it's on the stems.
That was a thing. That was a trippy thing about the Northern Lights that we had, was that I had read, I think it was in Marijuana Botany, it basically said like resin grows on the flowers and on some of the leaflets, but not on the stems. And it might have been a different book, but I just remember early out going, okay, this is how it works. And then looking at our Northern Lights and just being like, the stem is just covered in real, you know, real heads, like actual resin, not just little trichomes, but like actual capitate trichomes, where you look at it and you're like, that's real resin, and it's all over the stems, you know, not on the actual stem of the plant stem, like inside the buds. And that has seemed to carry through into a lot of the different stuff. And I've also seen the lime make mutant heads, where for whatever reason they don't stop, so they just keep pumping themselves full until they make like a big glob of resin. Normally it's like they have their membrane and it grows and then it pumps into it and it swells a little when it gets late. But I've seen them where there's like a DNA coding problem or some shit, where it just the head just fills and fills and fills and fills, and it just keeps going, almost like where where you get like, when you get like the glycerin flowing out of the leaves, like guttation, it's like that, but it's resin. It's like you actually see it and go, this is for real, You can zoom in on it and get a picture, and it's like they grow up and they get so heavy that they just like fall over and continue to just ooze out. So there's definitely some resin traits in that coming from various things in there. I think mostly the Northern Lights that are anomalies among other things, where it's like that's not how that works, but then it does,
You think the Northern Lights or the OG is related to the Northern Lights?
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about that on First Smoke. I think like it's not necessarily, people will hear me say that and think that I'm saying that OG is a clone out of Northern Lights seed or whatever. It's not so much that. It's just that I think that whatever region of Afghanistan all that stuff comes from is a region. I don't think OG is Thai Colombian. I don't think OG is like any kind of a real crazy thing. I think OG is probably like two types of Afghani mixed together, and there may be older Afghani before they started switching over to the ditchweed Afghani that people started doing that was super broadleaf later on. Because originally Afghanistan, the hash production was on tall plants that had a little bit more of an electric high. And then when the beatniks showed up there, they started taking the weed that was free and rubbing it. And it was the stuff growing in the ditches that was the feral Afghani populations. And the Afghanis told them, they were like, this is not good. This is opium. If you want opium, we have opium. You should smoke, if you want to smoke weed and you want to smoke hashish is supposed to have a hashish high. That ditchweed over there, that has an opium high. So you don't need that. And they were like, yeah, but opium makes you constipated and it's super addictive. This is super nice, but it's cannabis. We love this shit, And so Afghanistan started leaning into farming more of what was the native Afghani populations with less of the influence from the Indian type stuff that they were growing, that grew these big tall fields that had more electric highs. And OG to me seems to be like one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's very much what people refer to as an indica or an Afghani, but because of the different way it grows, people think like, oh, it must have Thai in it. It must have Mexican in it. It must have something else in it. And I'm a little more of the opinion that it's probably a hybrid of a couple Afghanis that are similar to things that are in Northern Lights. And if somebody told me that, oh, it turns out, it was a seed out of a Northern Lights, I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be either.
In that realm. If somebody told me it's a hash plant Northern Lights, it's a Northern Lights, whatever, I would be like, yeah, I could see that. I mean, when they asked Neville what he thought about the OG, he was like, oh, it seems a lot like a Northern Lights. And I'm growing the old Northern Lights stuff from Seattle Greg.
Yeah.
That is.
I was just talking to him the other day.
Yeah, they're very much like it. They're very much like when you see like Chem and OG grow, you go, Chem and OG are definitely related, but once again, they might not be related in the sense that people think like they must have come from the same breeders and the same growers. They could just be regionally the same. It could be like there's one valley in Afghanistan that in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, people brought seeds from there. Some went here, some went there, some went over there. Different people bred them different ways. And then when all is said and done, you wind up with these populations that are similar, just like how somebody might have a Colombian that's similar to somebody else's Colombian. It doesn't mean that it all came from the same breeder who sold Colombian seeds.
Yeah.
But they're regionally related in my opinion. And, OG Kush loves to get powdery mildew. I've never seen that from so-called sativa, from a equatorial type. Like that's not a common thing with those. Like the ones that are susceptible to that tend to come from the really arid conditions where it wasn't a big concern for their evolution, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it also, you know, it's very like snappy, like it's used to growing in a field side by side with a bunch of stuff in like a plain, like how Afghani weed grows, versus things that are from the tropics, which tend to grow as a big individual plant with large branching that has to be able to withstand, you know, the tropical storms and growing as a big tree
High
that might
UV
sit there.
index as well. I believe a lot of the morphology is based off of environment, because when we look at, you know, something that's in an arid, cold environment, the plant is shorter and stocky. And they do that because they need to conserve more energy. When they're closer to the ground, it's warmer, you know,
Yeah.
and it's the opposite when you're in equatorial. You know, you have less surface area on the leaflets that allows air to move, you know, because the air
Yeah.
is humid and hotter, and then you
Yeah.
have longer internodal length.
And it
And
wants
the
to get rid of moisture. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it helps to diffuse excess moisture.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end, it's helping to conserve, you
Yeah,
know.
because the whole
So
field of Afghani is like a big turtle shell. It's protecting the ground from the sun at all times. It's making sure that everything stays under there. It's shaded. It can stay wet. It has seasonal rains. And then when you have the things from down by the equator, they like, you know, they grow, they're more likely to grow where there's other plants and have to compete. They want to be taller. They want to find the sun. They want to let themselves dry off to protect their
yeah,
seeds. Their seeds fall right out because they can start any time of the year because it's 12 and 12. Everything just grows. They grow big. There's a lot of things like there's a lot of real easy ways to explain all the mechanisms of um, survival and reproduction based on the things. If you look at them, you go, oh, okay, like crazy Afghanis with the big giant leaves, like a grape soda skunk. If they get left without water, they'll not only will they shade themselves and they tend to grow like out in the open. There's not they don't grow intermixed with a bunch of other stuff. Like it grows where it grows, and it'll be like a whole big chunk of cannabis right there. And those leaves, if it doesn't get enough water, there's tons of water in those leaves for them to eat. And they'll eat them from the bottom up. They'll start with the biggest leaf, which is the biggest leaf on the whole plant is on the bottom. And it will eat that one first to get rid of the water. And it'll eat that leaf instead of drooping the plant and hurting the seeds. And that's a lot different than something from the equator, which if you do ever let it get dry, it's a lot more likely the whole plant will droop because it doesn't have the mechanism, because it's not used to that. It's used to
yeah.
there
They're
being
and
moist
smaller
understory.
leaves are less nutrients, less water holding capacity.
Yeah.
You know, these conversations are the conversations that, you know, were happening 25, 30 years ago that you know, became the nomenclature for indica and sativa, because back then we were looking at plant morphology, and someone might say a 60-40 indica sativa, and you would know that, okay, you would know that what to expect when you flip this thing into flower. You would know how much it's going to grow or what to kind of expect with your training needs. And somehow it developed into effect. But you know, when I was taught by the OGs, these were the same conversations that we were having about plant morphology and indica versus sativa versus effect.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you know, then there winds up being it's funny because there's been like these scientific studies where they're like, we actually analyzed the different plants and we took these ones with narrow leaves and we took these ones with broad leaves, and there's actually no linkage between the effect that they have and the cannabinoids. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys are testing things that are not from the original populations.
Yeah.
Everybody knows haze is not Bubba Kush. Sorry, like that's not.
Yeah.
To argue that with me, people argued that with me. Like Sink Angel argued with me about that, and I was like, bro, like, do you really think that haze and Bubba Kush have the same high? Like maybe you can find a sleepy high in haze, and you can find an electric high in an Afghani, But that doesn't mean that there's not like often more CBD in Pakistan and more straight THC and THCV in narrow leaf equatorials. And there's like very well documented things. And they're like, well, where's the science? And I'm like, the science is anecdotal over thousands of years, over millions of people's experiences. That's not an anecdote anymore. That becomes a scientific study because we're studying the effect of plants on people. And so the only way to know whether or not it makes you go, whoa, shit, or it makes you go, oh, fuck, like that, you do that to people. You don't look at the fucking white paper to figure that shit out. You look and you go, dude, Thai weed and Vietnamese weed is not the same as Pakistani weed, is not the same as Southern Russian weed. Like, sorry, but there's very well established science on these things. And then they publish one paper that says, well, we tested Blue Dream and this other things, and there was ones that had broadleafs and ones that had narrow leaf, so there's no correlation. And I'm like, yeah, now because you've already gone through the reassortment independently of various genes, and now you have these things that are like this, and it muddies all the waters because you're not looking at a true untouched Mekong Delta fucking plant versus a fucking Hopar Valley plant. Like, these are not this, you're not looking at the right shit, which people already have. Clark and all these other people have already fully established that these things are like real trends. And I'm just sitting there going, how do we get here where like we're trying to do like new scientific breakthrough studies? I'm like, guys, this shit ain't the thing to study. We don't need to like see if like
Blue Dream is, we don't need to look at a polyhybrid and determine, because that's the thing too, because I've grown a lot of landrace, I've grown a lot of long flowering varieties, and in my opinion, the effect isn't anything different than something that might have the same type of profile, right? For me anyway. I'm not saying that they don't have their purpose, but I would like to see some science on real legitimate heirloom and landrace varieties to see if there are if there is a correlation between chemicals that are metabolically being produced that take more time to develop than something else, than short flowering varieties. Obviously, we need the right types of plants because you can't do this with a modern day polyhybrid. But I know for me, I've grown a lot of landrace and stuff like that, and oftentimes I end up just being really disappointed because the high's just not there, the potency's not there, and the effect for me is oftentimes not there. And I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, because some of these things might be more resilient to powdery mildew or botrytis or things and stress factors. But I would like to see some science on that. Or I would like to get my hands on something that legitimately has a different effect, like is often that you hear in like cannabis lore, like, oh, this has no ceiling on the high, it's psychedelic. Like, I've had psychedelic experiences, but it was like when I was 15, when I first smoked chronic, like
yeah, and it might have been on some sleepy indica.
Yeah,
at that point with your tolerance. Yeah, like the effect that I'm talking about is it's like it's not even so much that maybe something might strike you as super electric, but like when I grew, funny to go back to that, but like when I grew Blue Dream, like it was only really worth me smoking it in the morning because it had a really bright, energetic cerebral high. Or when I grew Swazi and I was like, cool, I can smoke this and go out to work and I'll be super clear-headed, and when it wears off, there'll be no crash. But if I smoke fucking like some of the gnarliest like Northern Lights hybrids I have, and I smoke that and go out to work, like when the high wears off, I'm going to want to go to sleep. Weed, like it's undeniable. And nobody can tell me that there's not some weed that makes you fall asleep on the couch.
But that's true for me too, because the Afghani bull rider is like that for me. I know specifically not to smoke that during the daytime, because if I smoke that during the daytime, as soon as I'm not high, and the high on that usually lasts like an hour and a half, it's like, dude, I'm taking a nap. And it doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm taking a nap if it's in the car,
Yeah.
on, you know, if it's at my desk, I just can't, I can't help it.
Yeah, and that nap is the effect of a heavy Afghani. That nap. And there's a lot of shit that's in the Afghani that's not coming from, it's not coming from that part of the original gene pool. Because like I was saying, like Afghanistan, like they didn't want that. Like they didn't want that was ditchweed to them, the sleepy shit. But
Yeah.
we've wound up with these little slices of it over the years where you wind up with like this super fucking sleepy shit. And even though a lot of like the land racy stuff, like I was talking about the Swazi or, you know, Malawi or Thai, you might not smoke it and have a psychedelic experience, but when it wears off, it goes away and you don't fall
It does.
asleep.
It does.
But the heaviest of the Afghanis and the Pakistanis and shit, when they wear off, like you're going the fuck to sleep. Like, and that was the weed I grew up with. That's what I was used to. And then I was really tripped out when I finally was like, fuck it, I'm going to grow some Swazi, or I'm going to have like these different things. Like even like I mentioned Blue Dream, you know, or like other super silver hazes and shit. Things with the influence of the hazes and the various you know, so-called sativas. Like when you smoke them, you might not be like, oh, trip out, man, I'm frying on acid now. But when they wear off, they just go away. And like, that's like, okay, now the effect is gone. But when you smoke the gnarliest of the fucking so-called indicas, when the high goes away, it doesn't really go away. You're left with a really heavy fucking effect, which leads to what they call couch lock or falling the fuck asleep on the couch. Like you can't fight through it. It's like you can act like you're gonna be energetic now, but you're not. You're fucked. You know, you're too indica.
You know, I've been out to New York a bunch of times now, and one of the things that I noticed that's particular about the New York hazes, with like, you know, the piffs, the Cuban black, and a lot of the African hazes that are incorporated into those hybrids. That's one of the things that I noticed after the initial stone wore off. I was more like cloudy headed, like I was more in a daze or in a haze, as you could say, which was really distinct. And what was different was their hazes are different from California hazes, what I grew up with. The people talk about Jack terps, right? Which Jack is very nuanced to me. It's got sweet notes, earthy, it's funky, it's got a little, you know, train wrecks, the
There's
super silver.
Yeah, some of them are really, really cool.
And the hazes in New York are distinctly different because they're more of the frankincense, they're more of the perfume. And then the effect for the California hazes for me, when I smoke train wreck crosses, when I smoke blueberry train mac, for instance, right? Like I'll get really high, but it doesn't give me that sleepy effect. It doesn't cause any type of like mental cloudiness. But those specific varieties, they do that to me. They're like, I'll have the initial high. Once it's worn off, I'm like, where's my fucking keys? Like, I'm really cloudy.
Yeah. Confused, kind of like that's what all the A5 type shit, like it gets me, like it might, like I can't, shit doesn't line up. It's just like, and that also seems to happen with some stuff that's like terpinolene rich. It's weird. It'll be like my Cherry West. It's like, it's not, I don't think of it as being super potent, but then I smoke it and I'm like, I'm having trouble putting sentences together. It's like there's these little bricks in between my words where I can't quite get to the next thing. It's like this weird kind of confusion that comes along with it. And it's just trippy because like there's certain, you kind of have to smoke things all by themselves and smoke them repeatedly. And after a while you start to go, okay, I can see some differences in these. Because back in the day when I smoked like steady, just, oh, there's not a joint burning, roll one, you know, and you're just like pretty much chain smoking all day. You don't really ever know which one did which, you know, it's like judging up or something. Like,
you know, what I like to do is when I'm looking through stuff, I'll stick with the same jar for the entire day. You know, I'll only smoke one thing if I'm like looking through stuff. Typically what'll happen is I'll try every jar, and the thing that I go back to and that gets smoked the first is like whatever, this is what I like. This is
Yeah.
how I pick. You mentioned Blue Dream, and by the look of your body expressions, it didn't seem like it was one of your favorites. My experience with Blue Dream, and everybody's different. I personally am not a fan. I feel like it was like the very first really large commercially produced cultivar, and I remember it was around 2008 or 2009 that I was first introduced to it. And the first thing that my homeboy said is, dude, you will never believe how much this stuff yields. And he handed me a bud, and it was huge. It was just chunky. And he's like, dude, I'm pulling double the amount of weight off of this than I was anything else that I've had in the past. And then within the matter of maybe a couple of years, I saw it everywhere. And this was actually a period in time in where Northern California started to take more risks with doing the depths and outdoor, because typically before, when we were going up to Mendo, we were getting indoor. We were going up there because motherfuckers were running 200 lighters on diesel generators, and we could go get good indoors for lower than we were paying down in San Diego. And what I started seeing is a lot of people were growing Blue Dream. They were doing depths, they were doing outdoors, and I saw it to be widely distributed. It became like a very known cultivar. But I feel like the reason why it is so nostalgic is because at that particular time, we're in a place where Pretendicas, Mexican brickweed is starting to be replaced by a lot of production out of Northern California, which is being distributed all over the country. And so many people at a specific time period where that transformation was going got to experience Blue Dream, which was far more better than the Mexican brickweed or even the pretendies that they were getting. And so it created this kind of this idea that this is fire, this is the best, and it may have been, to whoever, experienced that. But I know at the same time, like, it was one of those things that, dude, it was Sour D and Blue Dream just went absolutely ape shit at that time. And so for me, it was like, I understand it. I understand why people like it. I understand how it became so widely distributed, why growers like to grow it. We were getting more money back then. You could double up on your yields, double up on your profit. But at the same time, when we're growing things like the Afghani Bull Red or the Sour OG or the PK, in comparison, quality wise, it didn't stand up at all, in my opinion. How do you feel about Blue Dream? Did you kind of experience the same thing? Did you see the same things happening that I did, or did you have a different kind of experience with it?
So Blue Dream, the first time I heard about it, I think was probably maybe like 2004 or 2005 or something like that. And it was being grown in Salmon Creek. And this dude that I knew had offered it to someone in my family. She told me, like, oh, there's this really cool plant. It's called Blue Dream because it has like a more dreamy high, and it's really cool. Do you want it? And I was like, yeah. And I didn't, and then I didn't really hear about it for a few years. And then, like you said, everybody was growing it, and people were basically growing Sour and Blue Dream. And the Blue Dream was basically like a bulletproof plant, except it's like candy for fucking bugs. Like mites love Blue Dream more than other plants. So it was one of the original plants that fucking spread russet mites everywhere. Because it just like it was like a banker plant for fucking bad bugs. It was like anything insects would like make pilgrimages to find the Blue Dream in the garden. It just, for whatever reason, the Blue Dream like really got mites and shit really bad. But other than that, it would get so much weed. And because of having that narrow leaf and like that influence, that jungle weed influence, it didn't like to rot. It didn't like to get powdery mildew.
It was easy to grow.
Such huge yields that people just loved it. And it was good enough weed that it didn't play itself out as fast as a lot of things will play themselves out, because people who were getting it when it was good, it rolls up nice. It smokes good. It smells really special and cool in the air. It smells like haze. It has that like real incensey thing in the air when it burns. So that makes it like special. And
that's one thing I don't see a lot of, or people talk about, is the actual scent of the smoke after it's burned. Because I remember distinctly having varieties that would smell like white sage, or that would distinctly smell like pine, or would distinctly smell like skunk.
Yeah, and that's the best kinds of weed, like Urkel, Hindu, Blue Dream, sour. I can smell when someone lights up sour. The best of my limes, like especially that double limes 10, when you light it up, it's just like, ooh, it smells like the bag of weed in the smoke. Or
is the resin on your lime stuff really oily? Because all the stuff that I make is just so it stains your fingers with the scent of the plant hours after you've touched it.
Yeah, it's really oily, and especially like a lot of the black lime reserve is extra oily because the Chem 4 is oily, or how it breeds, And then there's plants in there that are not oily. So like if you breed right and you play around enough, you'll find like limes that have like the really tacky Northern Lights resin, because it's full of Northern Lights, and the Northern Lights is like one of the best like kind of hashers. It's more like the resin on it's more like almost like banana or something, where it just is like really, really tacky and more hard and durable than like even than like OG or something like that. But
I could never get the Limarilla to wash. The Limarilla in bubble bags would just make a mess. Yeah. And then you'd have this film, a rainbow film on top of the water that would look like an oil slick.
Yeah, most of it just will not wash. You have to take it like if you take Limarilla and you cross it with Bubba, or you put it back on Gorilla one more time, or you cross it with something like that, then you could get it. You just have to take it one more time back to something with the right resin, and you'll get a bunch of plants that will wash. Like, that's kind of the trick of it. And what's cool is the smells don't really go away, and the resin will change. Whereas something like my cherry limeade, by the time you get the resin to change, the smell's going to be really toned down, because a big part of the smell is terpenes. Yep. With the lime, it seems like you can keep a lot of what makes the smell special, but it's not so dependent on the terpenes. And the terpenes being so runny is, I think, a big part of what makes it not want to wash. But with Blue Dream, I grew it and I didn't even really know. I had a plant that I had to replace, and my buddy gave me one in a little 5-gallon bucket, and I popped it out and put it in there, and I wound up getting like 4.5 pounds or something off of like a July replacement that wasn't even very big. I was like, whoa, these are crazy. And I had the weed, and my buddy Jamal was smoking a joint in the parking lot at this show, and I was like, damn, what are you smoking? And he goes, oh, it's Blue Dream. And I was like, really? It smells like that when it burns? I was like, fuck, let me hit that. I had it dry at my house. I hadn't even tried it because I was on Blue Dream, whatever, like it was already kind of blown up, and I wasn't, I didn't really think that it was going to be anything special. And then I smoked it and I go, oh, okay, I could see why people like it. I mean, it's like you said, I think it was a lot of people's, the first thing that was really available. You could produce it in such big numbers that people could rely on having that be their go-to for some, like what they would know as kind bud, and not Pretendica or BC or whatever had been the things that were kind of flooding. Whereas a lot of the other stuff, like if people wanted diesel, it's like, yeah, you might want it, but it was all going to little parts of the country, and they were able to kind of suck it all up, and nobody could really produce quite enough, and it was harder to trim, and it yielded less. And Blue Dream would just produce so much, and because of that, it made it so popular with farmers that it took up a huge share of the farm space. Yeah. And people were able to just really bust it out like crazy. And I think Blue Dream is one of those plants that is, overrated and underrated. It's like it's a good plant, but it's not the best. It's crazy because it's been like number one in the rec market the whole time there's been a rec market.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's been number one at the 215 stores the whole time there was 215 stores. And it's like, it's not that good, but
if it
good.
sells, you're gonna grow it. You know what I mean? If you're gonna get the same amount of money as you do lemon cherry gelato, or maybe even more,
and
then why not grow it?
And I think it's distinct enough that the people who like it, they can
come
really
back for
like it because it really tastes like Blue Dream. And the people who don't like it, it's funny because people will be like, "Oh, if you don't like Blue Dream, you've just never seen it good." It's like, no, some people hate that.
Yeah, no, and I don't like it, and that's how I am, because I've had great batches of Blue Dream, but I still don't like that profile. It was just like the green crack that we used to get from NorCal back in the day.
Yeah,
I didn't like that, or the Afgoo. I didn't like the Afgoo either. They were all kind of like woody, sandalwoody, a little incense on there, but it just wasn't my thing, because I was like, dude, we had the sour OG down in San Diego, and the sour OG was fucking banging, bro. I mean,
special and loud and really different and not weedy. Like all the ones you just mentioned, there's like a thing. It's like there's a sheet or a blanket over the smell. There's this thing of weediness over it where it's like, yeah, they're almost the shit, but they don't have that like high note. That the most special things.
They're not bright. They're not bright.
They're not that even at their very best. They're kind of like if you had a sour or an OG that was a little bit turned, that was a little bit spoiled or not done right. They never can really get to that point where it's like, ooh, shit, what is that? That's just crazy. It's like they're good enough, but they're not quite like, they're just not quite hitting that little peak, you know? But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a cool one. And I think like there's a lot of potential probably with breeding it because it has so many cool things about it. And if you could just get it to be a little different, if you could keep that cool haziness that it has and then get rid of the little bit of muddiness to the smell and that little thing that people don't like and replace it with something that's really good. Like I did like a Blue Dream hybrid, and then I crossed that cross with a cherry lime, and then with the cherry limeade it was like it kind of smelled like candy cherry limeade, and then when you smoked it, it smelled in the air like cherry Blue Dream. So it was like really fucking cool. Like, damn, that one's fire. And it was just like too sexually unstable to grow indoor or in depth. And so I haven't like leaned into really breeding it that much. I try them here and there, and I'll usually herm them out. And so I haven't really done anything with them, but it made me go, okay, so maybe if I take like a worked stable cherry limeade male, put it on a Blue Dream, breed it a little bit, keep everything good, get rid of everything bad. Like it might be a cool tool to do something like that. But then at that point, it might just be smarter to take like the most killer pure haze cut, you know, and then hit that with a cherry lime instead, and fuck the blueberry, fuck the skunk, the northern, get rid of all that stuff that's in the super silver and everything, and just keep the cool haziness added to that. But you know, that's what's cool when you do little crosses with things. It's like an investigation into what you could potentially do. Then you go, well, what was the cool part? All right, well, let's just go with the cool part and get rid of the washed out Amsterdam side of it, you know?
Yeah. You know, I love popping stuff and looking through stuff. I oftentimes find myself in my rooms multiple times a day to just go back and re-smell plants. And it's like, I smelt this plant, 3 other times at 3 different periods of this day, but I love it. I love it, man. We're at about an hour and a half. You want to open it up to a little bit of Q&A?
Yeah. Can we take just a quick break real quick? I actually have to email some pictures over for my son's school.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to actually grab my bong, so that's perfect timing.
Okay. I'll be right back in a couple minutes.
All right. Me too. We'll be back, guys. Make sure you guys get your questions queued up for Jackson, if you guys have any. And when he returns, We're going to do Q&A. But for now, we're going to do a smoke break. And I actually have some fresh blueberry Train Mac skunk cut. And I'm really excited. This is what I've been smoking on the last couple of days. It's got that really bright, earthy skunkiness to it. I absolutely love it. Intermission. Yes, intermission. I could play you guys some thrashcore punk rock for the intermission. Got the amp and guitar behind me. Also, while I have you all in here, you can use code SAVE NOW, one word, for 20% off the Full Crop Science website. And, we mentioned Greg McAllister earlier, Seattle Greg. He sent me a bunch of freak show hybrids that are going out with all Full Crop Science orders until they are gone. And he sent me thousands of seeds, thousands and thousands of seeds, probably 10,000 seeds. So those freak show, the Sawtooth freak show hybrids are going out with orders, and you can use code SAVE NOW for 20% off your order. One-time use code. Oh, you ripped the guitar? All right, let me see. I'll play a thrash punk rock song for you guys real quick during intermission. It's not going to be good, but I'll do it. There you go. That was terrible. That's the extent of my musical abilities. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday. I'm actually at home. The reason why I'm not in the office today is because my truck is in the shop. I had a bad fuel injector on one of my cylinders, which is getting fixed. Hope you guys enjoyed. So that was actually Infest. Infest is an old thrashcore punk rock band from the late 80s. And I'm sure none of you guys have probably ever heard of them unless you are a hardcore punk rock fan, which I was a fucking punk rocker for a very long time. Show that to Yellow Wolf. Yeah, actually, speaking of Yellow Wolf, I have been working with Yellow Wolf's mom, Sheila, Mama Wolf, for a while now, and we were about to come out with a full-on everything, edibles, drinks, fucking pre-rolls, the whole thing, and then the whole hemp thing hit with the new hemp ban, and the company that we were going to be working with got cold feet, so we had to put a stop to that. But we did release Mama Wolf Kush F2, which is available on the website, by the way, and that is Chem D crossed to Black Lime Reserve F2. So I hunted out some of the more sweeter phenos, and I made an F2. Chem Dog BLR F2s. Those come with freebies too. Those are on the Bokashi Seed Vault website. And right now I've got a little tent behind that in that closet back there that has the Gay Laser and the Blueberry Starliner. Gay Laser is the Sunset Sherbert Rainbow Belts crossed to Starfighter Mac, and the Blueberry Starliner is Trainwreck Blueberry MK Ultra. That's from 2003, crossed to Starfighter and Mac. They're about, let's see, on the 12th, it'll be day 30. So that we're at day 28 today. I just tested to make sure they didn't have any herms. So far, they're smelling more. They're leaning more towards the Starfighter Max side. And I'll be releasing those pretty soon once they're done testing or once they're pretty close to the end. Did I ever give a Blue Dream cross to the guy Mad Dog? No, I've never given Blue Dream. I've never used Blue Dream. I only ever grew out Blue Dream for one. I want to say I only grew it out once. I grew it out and I was like, I did a whole harvest and everybody was like, what's up with that sour OG? So I was like, fuck this. I couldn't fucking sell it. Nobody wanted the Blue Dream. None of the people that everybody that I was, working with wanted the Purple Kush, the Afghani Bull Rider, and the sour OG. This is just what it was. Andrew says, oh, whoops. Yeah. So something about anti-disco. But yeah, I the thing is, I started a punk rock band when I was 15 and I didn't even know how to fucking play anything. I went and got a bass. My friend kind of knew how to play guitar, and I had a friend that didn't know how to play drums. And we all bought instruments and we started a punk rock band because, like he said, punk rock was never really meant to be music. And it wasn't really even music for us. It was an art of rebellion, to be completely honest, because my friend group was real small in high school. And we were of the mindset that high school was basically conditioning for a 9-to-5 job. Or, and it was always all about participating in school spirit and rooting for the football team. We were like, fuck that. All we want to do is fucking smoke weed, drink our fucking 40s, and fucking jam. And so that's what we made our mission. That's what our mission was. It was basically, we used to stuff all of the fucking vending machines at our high school with wet paper towels. And at the end of the day, after the last bell, we would go to all of the fucking vending machines and pull out all of the fucking wet paper towels because it would catch everybody's change. And then it was me, my homeboy Clay, Nathan, and Paul. And fucking Clay's parents got a divorce and his dad moved out and then his fucking mom moved out of the house. So we were 15 and he had his own fucking pad. So we were doing the fucking most, dude. Whether we were fucking on acid or mushrooms or fucking crossfaded from drinking 40s, old Mad Dog or St. Ides, and fucking smoking bags of Mexican brickweed. Yeah, dude, we'd fucking get that change, maybe $20-$30, and we go buy 4 40s and fucking $20 worth of fucking weed. Go back to the fucking cabana, to the empty house. It was so fucked up because there was no food. There was literally no food. Like nobody was supporting him when he was 15. It was pretty fucking awesome. And we fucking built out a band room. Clay was a phenomenal musician. But we sucked. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. But we did put out a vinyl record when I was 16. It was a compilation with 3 other punk and grindcore bands. One of them was called Disorientai Youth, Hell Christ, Bastard Ass Manics. And the other was Crippled Mongoloid, and the other was Losing Fusion. Our band was called Charm Burglar. Those were the days, man. If you look at the very first post on my IG, I think it's a picture of me behind a drum set, faded at like 15. And then I think there's another picture at 19 where we like had a band reunion. because I had moved away to grow weed. And then like a year into it, my friend had a wedding. We had a little band reunion. It was fun. Punk rock, you know. Here's a little question from David. It says, what do you think about using your Microbe Plus in the last couple of weeks of flower in living soil pots as a sort of flusher or finisher? So I don't recommend using the Microbe Plus in later stages of flowering. I usually cut it off around week 5 or 6, depending on my flowering time. If I'm like 55 days is usually my harvest window for a lot of my varieties. And they, you know, it just depends on the flowering time, but I don't use it in late stage flowering because, again, the whole thing about the Micro Plus, they're microbes that are basically liberating nutrients into the soil, and they're expediting those natural nutrient processes that happen in the interface that happens with carbon and nutrients. And so you're not really trying to add, you know, a lot of stuff towards the end, or really anything at the end. You know, that's the time when the plant should basically be metabolizing all of the nutrients that it has stored in its leaves. And, you know, that's not a time where you would fertilize really any crop, even with microbes. Because I look at microbes like the same way I look at agronomy, right? Timing, placement, and quantity all matter. You know, the amount of fertilizer, when to apply that fertilizer, and then where you place that fertilizer all make a huge difference in the outcome. And the same thing could be said with microbes, right? Timing, placement, application, what types of microbes, you know, what type of fertilizer. Yeah, and Jackson will be back in a couple of minutes. Spring prep will be upon us soon. So, excuse me, we're getting prepared over here at Full Crop, making sure that everything is running smoothly. And spring gets real busy. So, you're not late to the party. Jackson will be back in a couple of minutes. We're just having an intermission, and then we're going to do our live Q&A in a couple of minutes. You guys can ask questions. I know I saw a couple of questions that had come in earlier while we were chatting. Things like questions about popping older seeds. What can you do to help facilitate their germination? I know I saw a couple other questions, but when he comes back, make sure you guys have your questions ready. And remember, save now, fullcropscience.com, freebies with orders. We got a comment right here from Dare T the Grower. He said, Bacillus in the no-till beds from clone to week 7, bi-weekly. Bacillus and Glamis. Bacillus is good bacteria. I use it frequently with trichoderma. I like to use it. Mene Gene making hot pockets, rolling a joint. I mean, it's a possibility. It's okay, though. I appreciate everybody joining. If you guys are interested in these types of videos, make sure you guys are following the channel, and you guys can also sign up for the newsletter on the Full Crop website. It doesn't matter if you're a customer or not. You can sign up either on the pop-up, or if you scroll to the footer or the bottom of the website, there's a newsletter sign up, and that will enroll you into our automated emails, which will alert you guys with new podcast drops. It also gives you guys links to all of the free guides that we put out. So whether you're looking at dry cure guides, lighting guides, integrated pest management guides, nutrient guides on so to help you understand different nutrient dynamics, things like calcium, magnesium, amino acid guides on using biostimulants like kelp or aloe vera. All of those resources are available, and we can, keep you guys updated on any of those drops, any coupon codes that come out. And also when we're doing new seed drops, which have a tendency to sell out really quickly. So it's good to be on that email mailing list. So that way, when we're doing those drops, when they're coming up, or because they sell out quick. And if you go look at the Bokashi Seed Vault website, there is not much available on there at all, because when we list stuff, they go. What do you think about using peroxide for soaking and germinating seeds? This is a good question. Yeah, peroxide's a really good tool to have, in your arsenal, especially if you're worried about pathogens, or let's say, if you had, I don't know, let's say you had bud mold or something like that on a crop, botrytis, if you're worried about, the surface of those seeds being contaminated, you can basically sterilize the surface of those seeds to prevent any contamination. But there's a bunch of other things that you can do as well. But yeah, I have a little bottle of 3% peroxide back here. This is a little light. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I have a couple of clones under a dome, as well as my little seed station, which includes things like paper towels, hydrogen peroxide, and some different microbes like Bacillus subtilis, which was mentioned earlier in the chat. Here's another question. Did I listen to Cottonmouth Kings? Yeah, actually, I've met all those guys too as well, because my friend Rich, also known as Hopper, you can find him on Instagram, Hopper448. He was the manager for the Cottonmouth Kings for about a decade, and he was also heavily into the weed game. Back in 2008, he opened up a dispensary in San Diego called the Green Door. And if you ever listen to Cottonmouth Kings, they talk about the Bull Rider, they talk about the Purple Kush. That particular weed, they're talking about our crew, and so we were, rest R.I.P. Sean Rhodes, Mohead Red. He was another guy that was really close with the Cottonmouth Kings. And so yeah, the last time I saw Johnny Richter was with Jay. He was actually out here in Oklahoma. It was me, Jay, Fresh Harvest, Dank Duchess, Johnny Richter, Hopper was out there, and we were all kicking it and smoking hash and stuff like that. So I did listen to it. Was really interesting because I listened to Cottonmouth Kings way before I actually met them and got into the weed game, because I was listening to Cottonmouth Kings when I was in high school, when I was smoking mids, smoking brick weed, before I had touched real chronic. And then later on, I was actually introduced to the circle of people that all the OGs that taught me. So, well, okay. So Jackson is back. Welcome back, Jackson. I hope someone said he was heating up some Hot Pockets and rolling a joint. But I'm glad to have you back, man. I appreciate you taking the time to, talk with me and the 400 people that are in chat. Q&A time. So I saw a couple of questions earlier. One of them was asking about what you do to pop older seeds, which is a common question. But I'd love to hear what your take is on pop and germinating older seeds. And then I also want to go into a second part of that is when you germinate older seeds, do you ever find mutations, and do you find it that given a little bit of time they grow out of those mutations?
So for the mutations question, a lot of it is when you pop older seeds or seeds that weren't stored as well. What a lot of times what people are actually seeing is just damage. So it's trippy. It's hard to picture, but inside the seed, there's like 5 sets of leaves. So when they come out and they have their seed leaves that are round.
The cotyledons.
Yep. And then you see them grow their first true set of leaves that are like little canoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then oftentimes you get the next ones will be 3 fingers, 5 fingers, and so on. You think of the seed as being like the seed, and the cotyledons are alive inside the seed, but inside there is actually the meristem actually has 4 or 5 sets of leaves inside of the cotyledons, and so they're microscopic inside the seed, so you don't know that they're there, and you think that they just appear out of nowhere as they grow forward, but they're actually there in the seed the whole time. So if the seed gets a little bit damaged, you damage the first 4 or 5 sets of leaves. And as they grow, if they're older, as you'll notice, you'll start an older seed and it'll start off and it'll be all mottled and the leaves will be all twisted and
Funky,
it'll look like variegation. It'll
mm-hmm.
look all trippy. And then you'll notice you can, and I've proved this again and again to myself. It was nothing I ever read, but you'll notice that once they hit that 5th or 6th pair of leaves, they'll be normal again. And it's because when the seed gets damaged, it damages those first sets. And so it'll look like a weird mutation, but it's really just damage to the plant matter that was sitting inside the seeds. And another thing that'll happen is sometimes that'll get all the way damaged, and when they grow, you won't actually have a meristem at all, and it'll just get the cotyledons, and then they'll just sit there. And people have a tendency to look at those and go, there's 2 things that happen. People look at them, they go, oh, they're all fucked up, they're too old, they're mutated, and they kill them while they're little, or they think that they're just bad seeds and they're just mutants and they're no good. And so people will get rid of them before they grow out of that, which is a bummer because they're old seeds and people obviously wanted them, right? And then the other thing that'll happen is they'll just sit there and it'll just be the seed leaf sitting there from the beginning. And people will just pull them because they're like, well, there's no meristem, it can't grow. But what's interesting is if you leave them sitting there and you can keep them happy and not overwatered and too cold or whatever when they're tiny, they can actually grow a branch out of anywhere on the stem, even below the cotyledons, or they can grow a new bud from inside and create a new meristem at any random place that's part of the stem. It just has to have enough.
You've seen that happen?
Oh, a lot of times.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen that happen. I know what you're talking about, where it's like you get the cotyledons come out and then they just stall out.
It's a dead end. You're like, there's no meristem.
And you're like, so I've had that happen before. I've also had the mutations where older seeds, and I know from experience as well, hey, you might have to baby them, that's really baby them. But once you get them past a certain point, they're usually all right. But I've never seen that before, so that's really interesting.
I didn't know that it was possible, and I'd never read that it was possible anywhere. So it's like something that I'm sure other people have discovered it as well. I don't think I don't think I really discovered it, but I did discover it in my own experience. Just looking and going, okay, well, I'm just going to leave these things sitting here, and what really happened is I'll have some that are okay and some that aren't. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to disturb the ones that are in there because I'll put them in together and divide them later, because I don't like to use a whole bunch of space for seeds that I think will probably never grow anyway. So then they do come up and it'll be like there's, I have 10 little seedlings in a little pot or a little cell of a tray or whatever. And so then once they get up bigger and they start to harden off a little bit, you can divide them just like vegetable starts. And so I would do it like that. And because I didn't want to disturb anything, I would just leave the ones that were no good with the ones that were good. And it would be like there'd be, dozens of little sprouts. and a couple of them would develop good leaves, and some of them would get the first true set and they'd be all weird and wiggly, and then there'd be no meristem, or they'd get a couple sets and then there'd be no meristem. And originally I would see, like, from one of the nodes where, it could grow a branch, normally it would grow a branch from the node, and I'd go, well, that makes sense because there's a set of leaves, and then even though it hit a dead end, it would sprout a branch from a place where you would know a branch could grow. But then over time, what I discovered by leaving some of them sitting there was they would grow branches from places that, like, common sense would tell you there's nowhere for, you need a node on a cannabis plant for a branch to grow. And you can't grow a branch below the cotyledon. That's completely impossible. But over time, what'll happen is if they sit there long enough, they'll actually pick a little place to produce a bud, and they'll create a new node in a place where a node technically cannot exist. It will exist. And all of a sudden they'll grow a sprout out of the side of a plant where there shouldn't be anything. And you'll get a plant back out, and it might take months to happen. And so if you were just like letting them sit there, you'd look and you go, they're not going anywhere. But if you have something really valuable that you want to get back, and you get it to be a sprout, then, ideally you just want to leave it sitting there, keep the roots really happy, and just let it be in a mild environment, and make sure that there's enough nutrients for something to sit there and be happy. And some things that are seemingly impossible will actually grow plants. And I've got stuff back like that. It's really trippy. And, like, you'll look at it and you'll think they're mutants, they're all fucked up. And you'll think like that things that they've changed and they're no good anymore. And it's like, those are just things that happen to it. They're totally just part of, like, little bullshit. They're acquired traits. They come from things that happen to them, not from things in the genetics. So once they can grow past the damage to the actual tissue, then you have plants that you can either clone or breed, and they'll be just as good as if they had come out of a perfect seed. And then for getting things going, what I've started doing over the years is cleaning things up, however you like to do it. I like to
seed sterilization, like hydrogen peroxide, stuff like that.
Bleach,
bleach. Yeah.
So I've started doing like a 10% bleach wash, put them in basically like a water bottle, like a plastic water bottle for drinking, put them in the bleach wash. I'll put like a drop of soap in there because the seeds don't like to take on water, and then shake them in there so that I know they're really getting cleaned off. And then I'll dump them into a little strainer with screen, and then I'll rinse all the chlorine all the way off of it with clean water, with like distilled water.
Yeah.
And,
that's actually the same process is what we do with tissue culture. So if we're doing embryo rescue, we have to do surface sterilization first. And so we have it's called an orbital shaker, but essentially we're just putting bleach solution, putting the seeds in a jar, and then putting it on that orbital mixer for like 10 minutes. And then you basically carefully rinse everything off before you crack open the outer seed shell to get the embryo.
Yeah, and then that way you have a fresh start going for it. And then what I've been doing recently is taking medium coarse vermiculite, putting it in trays, and then like cloning trays, so you have the cells, and then putting the seeds down under the vermiculite a little ways. And then I've been using old school rooting solution that we used to use way back in the day, the KLN, Dynagrow KLN, and Clonex. And basically the rooting hormone helps the seed to be able to grow, because the same thing that happens where they come out and the meristem will be a dead end, and then it can somehow get a branch to go where you wouldn't expect it. Sometimes the taproot on these old seeds will be damaged as well. And when it comes out, it won't want to grow. And having them in the vermiculite with the rooting solution, it's kind of like they're like a micro clone. and they'll pop out their taproot, and if they were in soil, they wouldn't have the um, right environment to want to like root readily. And then if they were like in a paper towel, they're just, things peter out in paper towels. I really don't like paper towels unless they're really vigorous fresh seeds and you just want to crack them because you have them in the warmth and you're putting them out where it's going to be cold or something. And so in the vermiculite, what'll happen is they'll pop, and you might have like a scarred tip on the tip of the taproot, and it'll just sit there. But because it's sitting in the vermiculite at 80 in an 80-degree little room, they will actually root. The root will root like a clone. And so the tip won't grow, and it'll get roots the same way as I was describing the branches growing from places you don't expect it up top. You'll get roots that'll grow out of the side of the taproot going down, and that'll give it the ability to start really actually having a metabolism and getting the shoot to be able to push up out of the vermiculite. And then once they're in there and they're rooted and they're actually coming out, then I'll take those and I'll go put them into some really light soil mix and give them a little bit of liquid food. And I was able to go from planting stuff regular in nice soil that is for fresh seeds, I would get 100%. I was only getting like 5 to 10% off of some older seeds. And then I was able to get it up into the 80s and 90s on stuff. So it definitely has been working really well for me, working in the vermiculite with the 80-degree temp and the rooting solution mixed in with the water that everything is soaked with, and the plant food as well, you know. And I just use the KLN because I know how much to put in for successful rooting into a gallon of water, so that it's not like a dip or a powder or whatever else, you know, it is. And then the Clonex, just because I know it's like a good little basic thing. But any of like the products that you make that are the equivalent would work just as well. It's just those are things that are like super standard, cheap little things that I could grab that I saw, like, oh, I know that works for that, and I know how much to put in a gallon, you know, versus some of these other things where I might be a soak or a dip or whatever. And I'm not doing that to seeds, and I don't know how much would stick to the seeds. And so I can get the right solution, and then, you know, the good temperature, and you know, right around 80 degrees seems to be about the perfect place for rooting. And when you're planting these old seeds, you're kind of, in a sense, trying to clone them because you really want the roots to grow as good as possible. And so that's what got me doing the seeds in there, was I was using like peat plugs and stuff to do cloning, and I was having really good success with it. And then I started having like bad plugs, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take, and I was also trying to clone things that were really shitty. So like they would be plants that I would wait too long to re-veg, and I would be re-vegging them, and it would get all the way into the winter, and the plants would be really tired, and I'd have these shitty little sprouts, and I'd be like, these things, they're just not, they were not working. And so I started putting them in the vermiculite, and I started taking like cuttings that were like micro cuttings, just total shit, and not very green, not doing very well. They're on plants that are dying. So the metabolism, there's no way to get it to catch up, even foliaring and everything. They're just so slow and wimpy. And then putting them in the vermiculite and getting them to root. And I'm like, I never could have got these to root the other ways I've been rooting things. So I was like, well, if these are rooting this well in this vermiculite, then I wonder what the difference would be in seeds, because I know I couldn't root these cuttings in soil in my greenhouse. And I'm rooting them in this vermiculite in the 80 degrees, doing proper cloning. And I was also having trouble rooting these things in the proper cloning when I was using a different medium. So I was like, I should try this with seeds. And I tried it with seeds, and I went from fucking 5% to 85%, like right?
I went to a facility who started running into issues with their propagation, and they ended up sending out a bunch of different medias like Root Riot and like peat plugs and even some rock wools that they're having problems with, and they got them tested for pathogens, and there was like a bunch of anaerobic pathogens like that were already present. And so I do still use that stuff, but I'll if I'm taking them at home, like I'll microwave my plugs, I'll put them in the microwave for like 5 minutes while they're moist and get them, so I can sterilize them.
Yeah. Well, the trip was for me was like the first way that I learned to cloning. I was 9 years old when I learned to do clones from my mom. And she had learned it from this lady who was a friend of hers because she wanted to have plants indoor. She needed to clone her stuff. And so she had just learned it when she taught me, really. And this was how she did it, was basically with vermiculite and KLN. And so what was a trip was when I was like, okay, I need to do something different. I was actually considering just rooting in like Pro Mix or cocoa or whatever I could get. And I went to the nursery and I was like, I had been having a problem too with some fungus gnats. And I was like, vermiculite seems like, because it doesn't really have, it's not a good place for anything to live besides plants. It's pretty inert. And so I was like, I should just grab some vermiculite instead. And so I grabbed some vermiculite and I was like, fuck, giant bag of vermiculite does trays and trays and trays. I was buying plugs, and the plugs cost what they cost, whether you're using the iHort Q plugs or the Root Riots or the Rapid Rooters or whatever they were. They were all relatively expensive in comparison to using some stuff. And when I looked at the vermiculite, I was like, dude, I got this bag of vermiculite. It's like 3 cubic feet or 4.5 cubic feet or something. And it cost, I can't remember, $30 or something. And
I'm gonna have to try that, because that does sound more logistically
shit.
efficient to buy, a 3 cubic foot bag for $20 as opposed to spending, $35 on a bag of
I was like,
plugs.
this is like 5% the cost or some shit.
Yeah.
I was blown away. I was like, man, I'm basically paying tons of money to do a bunch of work, and then at the end of it still have worse results. And then I started doing the vermiculite, and I was like, I'm cloning things that are so wimpy. And what's really cool about it is, because of the way that I'm doing it, I actually leave. That's how my mom showed me to do it back in the day. She's like, it's a tray and it has 36 cells and it's full of vermiculite, and you take a gallon of the solution and you lift up the corner of the tray of cells and you pour the whole gallon in and you let it sit, and it absorbs most of the gallon, and you're left with solution at the bottom of the tray. And because your solution's down here, it's completely saturating the vermiculite, but the bottom of your root is up here. So it's still sitting in where it's very wet, but it's always a lot of air because of the texture of the vermiculite. Yeah. So what's really cool about it is you get that perfect honeymoon spot of the air to moisture ratio, and you're able to just leave solution in the bottom of the tray while it's there. And so you basically check on your clones every few days, and you look and you're like, oh, there's a little solution there. And as soon as it gets to the point where it's just wet down there and there's no solution, I just put back a little bit under there, and I know that it'll just be perfect again for a few more days. And I don't have to like go around, because when I do the plugs, I use like a little, like kind of like a squirt ketchup bottle type deal. And I go around and I moisten. Moisten, because if they're overly moist, the deal with the vermiculite is because there's so many nooks and crannies.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to try that.
Sitting in air, it's really fucking cool. And vermiculite's pretty standard for horticultural uses. Like people use vermiculite to do a lot of different
they use it in
challenging
soil blends, and for a lot of
you can put
people even use it as a hydroponic media, I think, too.
Yeah, I mean, it can be used for stuff like that. It's definitely like like it can be kind of, over time it can become kind of mucky in a sense, because it kind of comes apart and then it settles a little. And But for the process for the 8 to 12 days it takes you to get killer roots, it's like fine, and then I put multiple cuttings in each cell because it's really easy to divide them. So I use trays that have 36 cells, and I'll have like 100 and something cuttings in there. And then if like 1 out of 4 cuttings doesn't go, I still have over 100 cuttings in a tray, even if I lose 25%. And because of the nature of the vermiculite, I'm able to just grab the 3 cuttings out, divide them really easily, stick them into 4 inchers, and one tray is so many. And then what I do for the cloning is I put them in I was using domes, because over the years people go, oh, this is how I do it, and you go, shit, that's working really good, I should do what you do. And then you like get away from what works. And after a while I was like, you know what, my mom was getting 100% on clones over the course of years and years, basically taking like a bookshelf and tacking on plastic walls that are just sheets of plastic, and then the whole shelf is a dome. And so basically you just have like, all you really need is like, you have a heating mat on the bottom, and then for the shelves up above, the lights that are below work as a heating mat for the trays that are on the next one up. And
yeah,
so
I've had a little setup like that.
yeah, and so just the shelves and everything working like that, the whole thing is essentially a dome, and so then you don't have the moisture close in, and so you can put a lot more cuttings in a tray. They don't have to breathe as much because the whole thing's open. I gotta take a call really quick. I'll be right back.
If you guys got any more questions for when he comes back, we probably won't be much longer, but it's always good talking. I'm going to try this vermiculite. I don't think I have ever cloned in vermiculite. You mentioned on the Cheap Home Grow podcast that the GG4 lime is a 1-to-1. Can you give more details? Well, it doesn't come from the GG4. It comes from the Lime 1 BX. Has high CBD in it. Also, somebody mentioned gibberellic acid, which that can help, but the biggest problem with gibberellic acid is that you can overdo it really easily, and if you do, you end up with this really, really stretchy plants that are really hard to manage. Another thing you can do for old seeds is amino acids. So one of the things that powers the seed is the energy stored inside of itself, which is in the form of amino acids which are catabolized through enzymatic breakdown. And during that process, those energy is produced in the form of NADPH, FAD, and ATP. And that's what kind of gets the seed going. So you can, on some older seeds, you can use amino acids. There's other biostimulants you can use. Coconut water is one of those that you could use. But I've had seeds that I tried everything on and I couldn't get them to go. So like gibberellic acids, I've tried amino acids, I tried biostimulants like coconut water, and I've still had seeds that still wouldn't go. So there's a lot of potential things that you could be using. It just depends on which route you want to take. I was just going over some other stuff about different things you can use to get old seeds to pop.
Yeah, definitely the mechanics of the environment, like basically like the temperature, the the clean start so that you don't have bacteria and fungus sitting on the outside of the seed. Um, the ability for them to breathe and still sit. That's what the vermiculite wound up being really cool, because there's not really anything there to make them get like rotted and smutty. You know, they kind of are sitting there and they're moist, but if you're
They
not,
still have a lot of oxygen.
yeah, there's tons of oxygen, there's tons of moisture, and then as the seeds are sitting there, they're kind of in a soak, and what they're absorbing the whole time, the way that I'm doing it, is full of hormones and the micronutrients and the macronutrients of the little foods. And so when they do finally choose to come out, they're coming out um, into an environment that isn't really fighting against them, versus like if you have like, because I really like to start seeds in soil, but for the old seeds it just is too rough for them. And then, you know, like then it's like, oh, so a real soft environment is like a paper towel, but a paper towel is also so much,
it's but mechanically it can be really easy to damage, especially sensitive older seeds, if you're trying to go from a paper towel into another media. So I feel you on that. And I've never really considered doing vermiculite, but I'm definitely going to try it now, because I was just about to re-up on plugs.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah, I'm going to try that out. And I'll probably put together my own little mix in there, where I maybe mix up some of my own microbes, and maybe like a little bit of like, you know, something that I have but basically the same exact thing that you just said. I'm going to try it out, man.
Yeah, it's worth it for sure. And definitely, you know, whatever you have the best luck with using as a hormone for rooting, I think is really important for it, because getting seeds to germinate is really, you're really getting a seed to root. You know, you really want that tap root to come out with as much vigor as it could have.
I really, as far as biostimulants for seeds and clones, I really like I like fresh aloe vera.
Yeah.
And I also like, you know, I like coconut water, but I rarely ever use it because I'm in Oklahoma and we're just not like, you know, if I was in like Hawaii or something, it would make a little bit more sense. But
yeah, I did at one point have coconut water powder. I know you can get it. And and that was always something that I thought too for seed soaks. Like coconut always made sense to me because it's a giant seed, and it has everything to supercharge a sprout, you know. So
I did a whole podcast on just coconut water as a biostimulant, and I go over all of the different enzymes and organic compounds and electrolytes and stuff that are in there.
Yeah.
Have you ever used like sprouted seed teas?
I haven't, man. I mean, I've honestly, like, a lot of the seeds that I have that are really special, that are old, they're like too, like, a lot of them,
you don't want to experiment with them.
I don't want to experiment on them. And then I was like, well, I have these ones I'd experiment on. And then it's always like the way that I do everything is never set up that great for experimentation. I don't really want to do like vague experiments without good controls, without really knowing all my parameters are really intact.
And if you don't have the experience with it too, it's not something that you want to just be like, oh, I'm just going to jump into this on something that has value that I don't want to destroy.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like, you know, I look at it and I go, oh, I could do this. And then I'm like, I look at it and I know enough about the scientific process to be able to look at it and go, the way you're about to do this shit is not really going to be that scientific. And so you're going to, if it works, you're not maybe going to come away with enough from it. So that's why as soon as I was like doing cloning a certain way, I went, okay, I'm just going to take the exact same process that I'm using for clones, and I'm going to put some seeds in here. And you know, when I did mine, and I'm talking about going from specifically one that I actually where I actually kept track of it reasonably was I had done my piña seeds from 2012. They would still be perfect if they were stored perfectly, but they weren't. So I had gone from having them all come up to going to popping, oh, I'm going to grow 100 of them because I want to do a breeding with it, and going, I only got 6.
Oh,
and
shit.
then I said, okay, I'm going to do it again. And I popped 100 of them and I got 8 2 years in a row. And I was like, fuck, okay. So I was like, once I started doing the cloning, I went, well, those piña seeds I've already seen that I got 6 and then I got 8, and that's doing them in a real nice seed starting soil mix, not specifically for seed starting, but one that I always get 100% with seeds that are viable, and so I got 6% and then I got 8. And so to be really scientific, I would have to take the soil I was using and put it in the 80-degree chamber and use the same nutrients in it. And then I would know the difference between soil and vermiculite. But because I was already doing the vermiculite, I said, fuck it, I'm just going to try the vermiculite to see. So I can't say it's all the vermiculite, but what I did notice some really specific things about the vermiculite that were great, like the fact that the roots rooted. Like by the time I had a little sprout with a little root that normally would have been a single little taproot, I had these branchy big roots in there because it was in a rooting environment. But I was able to do 35 seeds in that environment, and I got in the high 20s. I think I got 27 somewhere in there, viable plants to come out of the, that actually came up versus the such low numbers. So
I'm going to try that because I have some seeds, my death breath, which is limarilla across the purple kush. Then I crossed that to BLR, and I have some other crosses with that. And I lost the mom of that, and I was like devastated by it. And I've just, I pop seeds and I'll maybe get a couple, like you said, a couple pop up, and a lot of them are slow. And it's like, I'm going to try that and see if that makes a difference.
It's worth a try. And the way I've been doing it is in with my little cloning lights, which aren't very intense because they're just for cloning.
Yeah.
The one thing that I'll say about it, the way that I've been doing it, is it leaves something to be desired on the lighting. I think if you could have, like, if you have a nice 80-degree veg room with real grow lights, like 350s or 400s or whatever it is, or really intense LEDs, whatever you have going that are actually for growing chubby plants, doing it under that at 80 degrees would be better, because the only issue that I did have was in some cases I would get a little bit of damp off because things would get so leggy under cloning lights. When I start seeds, I like them in the full sun, or I like them under like a 400 or a 600 or real lights. And then that was the other thing though that I was going to say was those piña seeds. And I also had a lot of luck with a lot of other things that I couldn't get to come up. I had Fire OG Cross Lime Pop. I had some old things that had stopped coming up for me, and when I put them in the vermiculite, boom, I got them back. I was able to F2 some cool things. But those seeds I did not clean, because when I went to do it, I was like, all right, I'm going to toss some of these in. If I don't do them now, I probably won't get it done. If I do the seed cleaning process of sterilizing the shells, I'm probably only going to get a couple things done. And then if they don't come up, it's going to fool me into thinking it doesn't work, even if it might have worked. And then I was like, I'm going to try it like this. If it doesn't work, I'll try it again when I have a little more time, and I'll make sure that they're really clean. But I tried it with regular old dirty seeds out of the bag that could have had any kind of spores and stuff on them. And I still had really, really good success with a bunch of different things. I started some seeds from 2007. I started some seeds from right around there, maybe 2008.
Where can everybody find your work? Do you have your own website, or your own certain seed banks? Because there's almost 400 people in here.
Yeah, so freebornselections.com has links to seed banks that carry my stuff, including skunktech.com, speakeasyseedbank.com, Seeds Here Now. Depending on what's going on, some people will have some stock, some people won't.
Yeah.
Skunk Tech tends to have like stuff that we collab on, like he might have the only lime heads, or he
Yeah.
might have the only mean mug, or some special stuff that we make that are real sought after, that every once in a while maybe um I'll have a little bit more of. We had Mean Mug, we did that, they were all gone. I realized, like, I looked on my notes and I was like, oh, my notes say that I have 2 bags of it and one of them is in the other fridge. And I had my 1 bag and I was like, they're all gone except what I kept for myself. And then, oh,
Yeah.
there's more. So a little bit more of those were made available. There might be some left of those.
I
Little
love it
things
when that
like
happens. When you're like, because that's happened to me a few times where I was like, oh man, I sold out of this stuff, and then I found my a back stock, and I was like, oh sweet.
Yeah. Or I'll have it and I'll be like, okay, I need to keep 300 of these for myself in the fridge. And then somebody will ask me and someone else will ask me and I'll be like, okay, people are interested in these, because people aren't always interested in everything. Some things
Yeah.
you go, oh, I'm going to put out a bunch of these. Like I had Diesel Cross Lime. They were killer. People loved them. And then I released them and people didn't really want them. I'm like, all right, Diesel Cross Lime is just sitting there. I have all the labels and shit. People are
Yeah.
not interested. But sometimes people are interested in something that I've set some back, and I'll be like, okay, I'll pull out 5 packs or 10 packs. And if people request them, maybe I'll just get one to like Alpine's really good about that. Jessica at Alpine, she'll message me and be like, there's one guy, he really wants this thing. And I'll be like, looking at my stash, like, dude, I got 150 of those seeds. I want to grow them all and get the best couple things out of it.
I know how that is. I mean, that's what happened with so I took the Chem D and I also crossed it to the gas by Capulator, which is the Starfighter Mac. And I did a bunch of work with that Starfighter and Mac, but I didn't have enough seeds. I was like, oh, I'm keeping all these for myself. I had a couple hundred of them, so it's like I'm going through them. I'm running, through all the seeds, but they're not good. Nobody else has them. It's like these are all for me until I decide I'm gonna either make F2s or I'm gonna do something with them. I have a bunch of stuff like that. I have a table over here, just right here, which probably has around 30,000 seeds of just stuff that I've made, that I'm like, I'm gonna go through this. So I'm like, have this cool rotation thing going on, because I bought my house here, and like we have our dispensary finally gonna be opening in our grow. It's like a little small vertically integrated. It's only like 22 liter, the whole facility, so it's all like smaller, like old school, like I used to do in a house.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so we have that opening up, but I have my thing here at my house where I bought a bunch of just small tents, and I just rotate like seeds constantly through my tents, and it's like super efficient, because it's like every 2 weeks I can pop more seeds, which is awesome.
Yeah. That's what I've been trying to tell people too. A lot of people make a lot of seeds. Like as soon as you get into it, you're like, well, I had this male, I put it on all these clones, and then I put it on all the sisters. And then you're like, I have 35 kinds of seeds the first time I ever tried to make seed. And then you're like, well, now I don't even know which ones are worth growing and which ones aren't. So it's crazy, but like I'll do and I know there's a few other people do this, like Gooey Breeder does it and a few people, but I'll actually flower shit. When I was talking about having those trays, like the 1x2 tray.
Oh yeah.
36 cells in it.
Yeah.
I'll flower in those fucking I'll get a plant like this big. It'll get a bud that's like a nice juicy bud. Like you can grow
just like a top, just one top.
A nice little thing like this.
Yeah.
What you would start a clone in.
Yeah.
And so I'll just put soil in those. And of course you have to feed them. You got to give them, I'll like top dress with some dry stuff. I'll give them some liquid food. And then, if they dry out too quick, cause it's hot, like if you're outside or in greenhouses or whatever, you can always let them do the deal where you put a little bit in the bottom of trays with no holes, or there's lots of tricks to do it. If any of it gives you a problem with how you do it, but I'll take one of those trays and there's 36 cells, and I'll put a dozen of this and a dozen of that. In a 1x2, I'll have 3 different crosses, or I might even just do 6. And then you can have 6 in a little 1x2 tray.
Just so you can look through stuff.
Because a lot of what you want to know is like, did it work? Did I get any of the traits that I wanted from either side? Are there new smells that are neat? Does it have runny resin? Does it have resin? Did it herm? And if they're gonna herm, they like to herm when they're like that, because they don't really want to live in there. And they're but we'll get surprisingly like tasty little chunks of the weed. And like, people would be like, well, then you don't get enough of the weed. I'm like, if I can't tell that it's special with a little scraggly nug like this, then I probably don't care. Like, if something's really good,
you'll know.
I know it's pretty cool if I got this. I can look at your weed and know if it's special. If it's like this, you like smell it, you're like, fuck, damn. Put that in the bong, get a couple hits. You're like, oh, that's good. And it's good. And you can do that with so many plants that way. And it's a really valuable tool to look through some stuff. And then like, if it's femmes, then it's even crazier, because, out of a tray of 36, when they're, after you sex them, you might only have 10 females. You might have 20.
And that's one of the things that I have to spend extra money on. Is I spend extra money on sex tests. So I'll typically pop like 25 plant seeds, and then I'm just taking the best 9 females out of that batch to put in. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the 6-inch square true 1 gallon pots, and I put 9 of those into a 2x2 tent. That's all fully automated. You can buy one for like $300 on Amazon from VivoSun or whatever, right? Fully environmentally controlled. It's got a light and everything all set up. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm using my soil. I'm using the, amendments. And I'm not like having to feed a bunch of stuff, but it's cool because I'm basically just getting, like maybe almost an ounce of plant.
Yeah.
And that's plenty between to look at and smoke. And it's cool because I can, like I said, every 2 weeks or every 2.5 weeks, I can be fucking clearing out a tent and then popping more stuff. So
yeah.
That's what I've been doing recently, and I'm digging it because it allows me to find, it allows me to go through more stuff, because like I'm doing hunts on Blueberry Train Max. I just popped a bunch more of the lime stuff, like I did. I know that you sent me back seeds when I gave you that lime Arilla cut in 2019, crossed with the lime F5. And so I have, I just recently popped some of those.
People loved those, dude. I gave them to my buddy Rick, who's like, he's in his late 70s, and he's grown everything over the years. He had all the cool shit. Plus he had tons of crazy stuff from family that collected things from Vietnam and South Africa and all over the world. And he was like, dude, those were my favorite plants I've ever grown. Those are the best plants I've ever grown, were the lime Arilla crossed with the lime. And that lime, the 2 males that I used on that's from the breeding that made the lime sour and the double limes and a bunch of other lime stuff that I did in that breeding with those 2 males. And so I
love that lime Arilla by itself is just phenomenal as well. I love
that plant. When you gave that to me, it was cool because it was the closest smelling to the one that I had put in the Emerald Cup when I first grew a big outdoor plant of that Black Lime Reserve. It was that same nose. It had like the nastiness coming through from the Chem D a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it had like from the oil can, like the skunkiness. It was like really, like it's not skunk weed, but at a distance, I'll tell you what, if you take that lime Arilla and put a fucking 1/8 of that in a Ziploc and leave that in a hot car, like when you open up that car, you're going to be like, what the fuck? This is so stinky and skunky, It's definitely packing the thiols,
That one is my lane right there. I love that cross. I've done so much work with it, and I'm stoked to be popping more stuff. I've got a couple in the tray back here that are a little bit slower to go. They're slower to go than the other ones, but they're going to get transplanted soon too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's you, like you're saying, you're doing the plants at that size. Like that's what I'll do is if I have tons of different crosses and I don't know really what's worth running with, I'll grow them tiny. And then whatever I go, ooh, I really like the smells on here, or there's like a different colors and it's the weed I want, but it's like an extra something a little bit cool about them. Then I'll take them and then I can put them up into 5-inch pots, 1 gallon pots, 3 gallon pots, like whatever, to really see, like if I'm like, ooh, this is really good, but now I want to find out, like, does it have a good structure?
Yeah.
Or, do the buds do
Well,
okay in the weather when they're fat or whatever? And so they'll kind of keep getting like, they'll keep getting promoted, like, hey, I'm going to give you a better job this run, and now we can see what you can do over here.
well, a good example is like, so these are super tight and they're not huge, but these are decent size. And this is, the standard size of what I'm pulling out of, flower size wise with like a 1 gallon pot in a 2x2 tank. And these are solid. Like this flower is super, super dense.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of people think that you like need to have like huge volumes of soil to be successful and stuff like that. But it's just about, having balanced nutrition, good genetics, the right environment.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen people doing some crazy, like people do like solo cup challenge on Instagram, and they're like, you'll see plants, they're like this crazy plant in a solo cup, it's like, well, didn't really need anything more than that. And for, when you're just investigating what is going on in your seeds, like the first time I have these depths set up here, and the first time I did it, I was like, okay, I want to make a nice little plant in case I want to seed it from that first generation plant to make cool seeds out of it. If I find something really cool, I want to have a good amount of seeds. I don't just want a few seeds. And so I did everything in like these like Roots Organic. They're like 7-gallon bags kind of. Mm-hmm. And in a hoop, I would have 150 plants. And I did it and I was like, that's cool. But then I looked at the hoop and I was like, I can fit like 1,500 plants in that hoop if they're in 1 gallons. And so I switched it over to 1 gallons. And then I realized like it wouldn't work very well for producing like good batches of seed per plant or getting a bunch of weed. But I was like, I get all the weed that I need to be able to see what the plant was like. Out of a 1 gallon was fine. And then I started going, I'm going to do some 5-inchers and some 4-inchers. And then I had some trays that I never transplanted. And I was like, these ones I never transplanted, they're just as good as the 4-inchers. And they're almost as good as like the 5.5, 6-inchers. And so I was like, shit, okay. So now I've kind of come to the conclusion that I can either leave things in 6-packs, put them in 5-inchers, or put them in 1 gallons. And now the 1 gallons kind of seem too big to me because I almost get the same weed in a 1 gallon as I do in a 6-inch pot. And it's like half the soil volume. And I originally was like, but when it gets hot, I'll never be able to keep them wet. And then because in little pots like that, all different things, you kind of have to hand water, or you're going to get a lot of under and over watering because they're all so different. Some things are big, some things are tiny, slow. And so I was like, fuck, it's not going to work. And now it's like, no, I basically water everything every day. It takes like 30 minutes to water like 1,500 plants in the morning in 1 gallons. I'm like, this is not that bad at all. And then I'll have the 5-inchers, the 6, I call them, they're really like, I guess they're in between 5 and 6 inches, the little square ones. Yeah. And I'll water them and I'm like, they're on the same schedule as the 1 gallons. So, or the 5 quarts, they're a little more than 1 gallon, but it's like, it's crazy what you can get away with. And if you let plants get super root bound in 7 gallons, they're still going to be dry twice a day. But if you flower everything before they get root bound, then even if they're in the tiniest pots, they stay pretty moist because they don't have such an overabundance of roots colonized in there,
Yeah, I've had really good success, and I never really grew in a tent that small before. I always just set up a room and kind of did that. Um, so it's a little bit different, but it's great, and I'm having fun with it. I do find some, I did a Chem D to that gas, and based off of both of the terpene profiles for those specific plants, I expected something that I did not get, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised because I was expecting more like sour, chemi, gassy type profiles, but I got like a super bright, sweet jackfruit type smell.
Yeah, that's the jackfruit smell was what our northern lights used to be when we grew it outside. They called it juicy fruit because it kind of smelled like juicy fruit gum, and it wasn't really loud like that, but it was definitely there to where you could smell that jackfruit hint on it. And the Chem D S1s, I think I grew like 20 of them from CSI. And,
Yeah.
a lot of it was that kind of like hashy, sweeter. I think out of 20, I maybe only had two that had that musky, chlorine-y, halitosis, funky.
Well, that's interesting that you say that because when I was doing the work to do the Mama Wolf Kush stuff, that's Yellow Wolf's mom, she selected because I gave her all of the phenotypes to try, and she liked all of the sweeter stuff. And so the ChemD BLR sweet side is what a line work that I did for that direction for her line. But I've seen the ChemDog come out, like the crosses of it come out really sweet. And then, but I've also, like you said, that kind of chlorine, really acidic, because I did a ChemDog cross the blueberry train mac, and that is like, it's super, super acrid. It's like astringent, it like burns your nose a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's trippy how things interact too, like you put something with, I was talking to somebody about that. It's like when you have you have males and you try a male with this plant and you're like, oh, that male wasn't that good. It didn't make that stuff that nice. I've already seen this plant bred with other things and it came out really nice. But then you try that with a different plant and then it's like magic. And you're like, well, this one is just the way that pairs work. You never really know until you try them, And
Yeah. That's one of the biggest challenges with conventional breeding with male and female is you never really know what you're going to get from that male plant until you grow out the progeny. And that's one of the things that I got to see with the Black Lime Reserve male that I had selected, was because I used it on so much different stuff that I grew out, I was able to see how that male influence was across a wide set of different cult moms, so like Purple Punch, I think I did I can't remember why I'm forgetting them all. I did a white truffle BLR, I did a gas BLR, I did a Starfighter Mac BLR, I've done like a bunch of different, and so you get to see like, oh hey, I did Afghani Bull Rider BLR that came out really awesome. Sour Tropical Tangy, it really, really expressed that sweet candy, trop lime, but with the AB, it turned it more into a tangerine, and it also a really powerful sour came into it. So I named it exactly on what like I smelt, which was sour tropical tangy, and it's like that BLR male brings in that a lot of that trop lime into the things that it touches.
Yeah, you start to get a picture when you see a lot of different things that come from the given male. And it's if you only saw one or two of them, you might think like, oh, it doesn't have, I was hoping it would have more of that thing I wanted. And then you see lots and then you can kind of tell.
Yeah. So I have right now like a F4 on the Blueberry Train Mac that came from the crinkle cut line that I pulled out of the F2s, and I have the male still that I used for that, because what I plan on doing is hunting through that F4. But if I don't like what I'm, seeing, well, I can go back to those F3s and pick out a different male. you know, and use that same mom that I like, but use a different male. And then I can kind of go through. That's like the amount of different line work that I have for Blueberry Train Mac right now is like pretty ridiculous, but I should be able to get through the majority of, well, I've already hunted all the stuff out, but I should be able to get through all of the stuff that I haven't touched yet this year. So I'm hoping to kind of get in there and like, you know, do a couple more F4s, hunt through the current F4s, you know, I'm just dialing things in so I get homogeneous seed lines. So that way I can stop the project, have it for whenever I actually want it. You know, if I'm like, hey, I'm going to pop some seeds because I feel like I want some of this smoke. Because that was my whole goal with all of this to begin with, was just to homogenize things without me having to keep things on ice or have to keep things in TC or keep them on and stuff.
It's
like
nice to have seed that you know is pretty reliably like what you want, you know, for sure. And then have the old stuff all put away so that you know you can dig back in there too, because a lot of the real value is in the old loose shit, because that's where you find, you know, that's where you'll find all your new types. When you make those fresh hybrids, you get millions of new plants, and every time you breed them together,
I know,
and inbreed them, you get them back down to thousands and hundreds and dozens, and then you get to a place where you could never get back to,
yeah,
what, you know.
and you know, I would consider myself a breeder, but I also don't do like an extensive amount of stuff all the time. Like right now, the only thing that I have is I'm making F2s of the Chem D cross the Starfighter Mac, but I have stuff that I still have to test that I haven't dropped, and I have like, you know, I don't extensively make like just tons of and always releasing stuff, because it's, for me, it can get fucking too much. It can be too much to try to hold on to, because like the thing is like when I pop seeds, I'm like, dude, I'm taking cuts off of everything just in case, because I've been in situations in the past where I was like, oh no, cool, I'm just gonna run these, see what's up, and I find something and I'm like, fuck, I should have fucking kept this, dude. And so like right now, if you go look at my veg room, I've got, you know, 50 fucking, you know, solo cups with all different varieties in there that like I'm just they're basically in holding.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I always have the same thing. It's just like nutty. It's like, okay, there's all these different things, and the further, you know, if you try to do one project with one little gene pool in different directions, and it's like, you know, it's like me with lime stuff. Like this year, I'm like, okay, I want to pull out all these favorite lime things and do these, and I'm like, okay, well now you have, you know, 50 things to grow, and they're just limes, like F1, F2, F3, F1, F3, F4, F5, you know, whatever, F2 to F5, like just these weird, like different things.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, they're all from different avenues. They're not just like all this one thing from these one. They're like, no, there's these males are from that year. Those males are from this year. This female's from this year. And they're all over the place, but they're like all the standout ones. And so last year I ran through a whole bunch of them in the little 6-packs, just so I could be like, okay, which ones have the real crazy candy lime? Which ones have the real crazy gas chemical? And then know like, okay, that's what these are like. And then that really helps too, when they're all still in veg, to know which males should I kill and which males should I keep for things, which things should be cloned, because there's some of them that were like, okay, this one has really, really cool plants in it, but not very many. And then this one, they're all really consistent and they're all really killer, and they're this one type of thing. It's like, that's probably a better place to clone the males, because those males are going to be easier to predict. Whereas these ones over here, I can clone the females because I'm probably going to kill 8 out of 10 of the females, but I can use them. I can use the males from this one over here on these females. And it gets totally insane trying to keep it all going, but you can see where you want to get to. So you're like, fuck, it's like you with your blueberry train mac, you're like, okay, I got to have a couple different versions of this because they're not, if you take one road too far, then you'll just get to the point where you'd be like, this is cool, I have this thing, but you'll be like, but there was that other thing that was so cool,
Well,
so
that's like, I have this cut that I grow, and I love this one. It's the skunk cut, and I didn't expect it. And it's, to me, I know that it's, I feel like that profile is everybody has a kind of a different experience of it. But what I smell, this is what I smell when I relate to that particular scent. But it's really strong. It's very acrid, and it's got like really deep. It's, it's skunky to me. Some people, I can definitely tell terpenoline dominant, right? But it's got those sulfur notes in it,
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't expect that at all. That's not typical in that line to find that structure of the flower was different, to find that particular terpene profile was different. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to keep this. And this is, I've had it for a couple of years now. And it's the same thing. I have one that's called the herbal cut, which is like this candied version of thyme, basil, and sage blended together.
Nice.
So
I like those ones, yeah.
But man, we've almost been on for 3 hours. I don't want to take too much up of your time. Do you have any, shout outs or anything like that? Anything you're working on that you want people to know about before we sign out?
Just on the lime stuff, I just did those. I did the Hindu reversal and made those femmes of the limes. I did the lime one with the Hindu, has been really crazy.
The lime Hindu one with the Hindu, is that similar to what I got from you? That's going to bring in that CBD, those heavy 1-to-1s?
No, it's gonna be like just a good regular, like a lime kush, like a lime variations. It's really cool. The lime one Hindu has a lot of variation in it, and so there's some that are a little colorful, there's some that are a little more chunky, some that are a little more greasy, but a lot of them, they seem to have like a nice tacky resin to them where people are making nice water hash with them, which is more rare for lime stuff. And they're, real sturdy. They've been doing good with mold compared to like the straight Hindu. And
that's one of the things that I see consistently with the Black Lime Reserve crosses, is the mold resistance is
they do good. And some of them are good with like the what's it called, alternaria.
Yeah, we did I did a little thing with medicinal genomics, and then the Cove Environmental, a lab out in Stillwater, and one of the professors of biology at OSU looking at alternaria. And that's a bad one, because that particular pathogen is spreading really rapidly, because it can cross speciate, so it can be on different types of plants. And then also it doesn't require a host. It kills its host, and it can live in like compost. It can live on decaying matter and then just come back the next year.
Yeah, it's been gnarly. And I mean, everybody thinks that's I think it was your study that showed, that everybody thinks they have septoria. And then
that's because that's what I thought. That's what I thought. And then I started doing some more research, and I'm like, man, I'm seeing this. I saw it on the oak trees outside, and I was like, dude, I think this is the same thing. So I scoped it. It looked the same. And then we did the genetic analysis to identify it. And I was like, all right, my suspicions were correct. But I had a variety also that was super, which is that, it was actually not even mine. It was one of the F1s from Capulator of that Starfighter and Mac. Dude, that thing didn't have a lick of anything on it. And it was weird because it was in a location in my yard where I would expect to see higher pathogen and pest pressure, because it was underneath an oak tree where it wasn't getting like direct sunlight. It was like kind of shaded, but it kicked ass.
That's cool, man. Yeah. And people have been finding things that are resistant. It's what's cool about people having seeds all over the place. You know, people hit me up and they're like, hey, I did this one and it did really good, and this one did really good. And a lot of times they're kind of surprising, because I'm like, that doesn't seem to have much in common with the other plants that I've seen do really good. Like initially it was like, yeah, people do these big hunts, and then the ones that wind up being resistant are the ones with a lot of pinene and terpinolene or whatever. And then people are like, oh yeah, then I had the root beer freeze did really good. And I'm like, that's totally a whole different realm of stuff that I would expect more get hit by something like that, like not the bud mold, but maybe more these kind of things, just because of the kind of thing it is in comparison to what I was kind of trying to put together in my head as like, okay, so that one did good and that one did good. And then all of a sudden there's just these other ones, and you would never know, you couldn't just guess like,
I mean, when it comes to selecting for pathogen pressure, I think that's strongly overlooked, but I think that it's super important, especially as more and more people cultivate and the more widely dispersed cultivation becomes, because pathogens and things that are specific are going to be easier spread if they're closer to somebody else's garden. If your neighbors are growing and the guy across the street is growing, and guy 2 houses down is,
yeah, people are spreading everything around, it's a trip. It shows up, it goes away if people stop, and then it comes back when people show back up. And yeah, it really matters.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on and chatting it up. If you ever need anything from me, you can just holler. And when it gets a little bit warmer and I have one of those the Chem Dog Black Lime Reserve, I'll send it your way.
Cool. I'll check one out for sure, man. I loved the Limerilla.
Yep. All right. Peace out, everybody. Until next time.
Right on. Thanks, guys.